Chapter 207. He was dead. Yi Xian stood on the spot in silence. In these chaotic times, if a person lacked strength, then they could only be trampled upon. Life and death, honor and disgrace weren't up to anyone's control. This was the bloody reality of life and death. The cloaked man who stood in front of Yi Xian sized up Yi Xian, and then a wisp of ridicule curled up on the corners of his mouth. A blind man like you doesn't even know how strong you are? Yet you're trying to be a busybody? You overestimate your ability. As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly charged forward towards Yi Xian. Meanwhile, Yi Xian vanished on the spot. A strand of sword light flashed. Hiss. The sound of something tearing resounded. A breath of time later, the surroundings fell silent. Yi Xian appeared where the cloaked man had been standing just now, and the cloaked man was standing where Yi Xian had been standing. They were around 20 m away from each other. The cloaked man's entire right arm was gone, and blood sprayed incessantly from his shoulder like a fountain. His countenance was extremely pale, and his eyes were filled with a solemn expression. As for Yi Xian, he was completely unharmed. However, a sword had suddenly appeared in his hand. Yi Xian turned around and walked towards the cloaked man. The cloaked man turned around as well, and he stared fixedly at Yi Xian. You're from the Central Divine Prefecture as well. Yi Xian didn't answer. He walked over to around 3 m in front of the cloaked man, and he was just about to speak when a hammer smashed against the cloaked man's head. Bang! The cloaked man's head instantly exploded apart, and he perished on the spot. Yi Xian was stunned, and then he turned to Tuoba. I haven't said anything yet. Tuoba gestured with her right hand, and the hammer flew back into her grasp. She glanced at Yi Xian. You can say it now as well. Moreover, it's your decision now. He can't resist at all. Yi Xian was speechless. Meanwhile, Tuoba suddenly walked over to Yi Xian and spoke softly. Do you think I'm a little violent? Yi Xian was speechless. Aren't you a little violent? Very violent, all right. Tuoba spoke with slight helplessness. My uncle said that a girl has to know how to protect herself when she's outside. If she doesn't pretend to be fierce, then she'll be easily bullied. Therefore, when I go out, I am very careful. As long as I find that the other party is dangerous to me, I will kill him with a hammer. If one hammer doesn't work, I will hit him twice until he dies. She spoke in a very serious tone. Obviously, she'd really been doing that all this time. Yi Xian smiled bitterly. Although this girl looked weird, she was actually a very dangerous person. Without thinking too much, Yi Xian waved his right hand, and the storage ring of the cloaked man immediately flew into his hand. Yi Xian was a little surprised when he took a look at the storage ring, because the cloaked man actually had more than 2 million best-grade spirit stones. Moreover, there was also a sword on the bright level. There were also a lot of miscellaneous items, totaling up to 10 to 20 million gold coins. He had earned a small fortune. When Yi Xian gave the items to little demon Empress Tuoba, she was so happy that she could not close her mouth. She had earned another 1 million supreme-grade spirit stones. As for the bright rank sword, it belonged to Yi Xian. At this moment, an old man suddenly appeared near Yi Xian and little monster Tuoba. The person who had arrived was the 6th house master of the drunken Immortal Inn. At this moment, there was a trace of blood at the corner of the 6th floor master's mouth. Clearly, he was injured. The 6th floor master glanced at the ruins not too far away, his expression cold and gloomy. As though he had thought of something, he looked at Yi Xian. Many thanks to young Master Yi for lending a hand. Yi Xian walked in front of the 6th floor master. Senior, did something happen at the drunken Immortal Inn? The 6th floor master nodded. Young friend, you should know that the entire firmament world source has been damaged. This is especially true for the Azure Prefecture. With the lack of spirit qi, many people have begun to act recklessly. The divine central continent is not that chaotic yet, because there are realm protectors to maintain order. Therefore, many people do not dare to act recklessly in public. But At this point, he shook his head and sighed. But there is no order to speak of in the Azure Prefecture and the Kanglan Prefecture. And this chapter is not over. Please continue to the next page. Some factions, mercenaries, and itinerant cultivators of the divine central continent have already shifted their target to the Azure Prefecture and the Kanglan Prefecture. They want to make a fortune in this chaotic world. Doesn't the Azure Prefecture also have realm protectors? Little Monster Tuoba suddenly asked. The sixth floor master shook his head slightly. I have already received news that because the divine central continent is short on manpower, the Realm Protector Alliance has already transferred all the Realm Protectors of the Azure Prefecture and the Kanglan Prefecture back to the Divine Central Continent. It is precisely because of this that some factions of the Divine Central Continent have set their sights on the Azure Prefecture and the Kanglan Prefecture. And my Drunken Immortal Inn is undoubtedly their main target. Little Monster Tuoba nodded. Yes, your Drunken Immortal Inn is very rich. Even I want to rob it. The sixth floor master, Yi Xian, was speechless. How could this girl speak like this? Little Monster Tuoba did not feel that there was anything wrong with her words at all. She was just speaking the truth. Thus, she asked again, your Drunken Immortal Inn is considered to be quite good in the Divine Central Continent. Why haven't you sent any powerhouses to guard it? Yi Xian faced the sixth floor master. Little Monster Tuoba's question was what he wanted to know as well. The sixth floor master smiled bitterly. Right now, our headquarters can barely take care of itself in the Divine Central Continent. How can we have the energy to manage the Azure Prefecture and the Kanglan Prefecture? I have already discussed with the seventh floor master and the fifth floor master. If necessary, we can only temporarily close the Drunken Immortal Inn in the Azure Prefecture. Close? Yi Xian frowned slightly. Won't we suffer great losses then? The sixth floor master's smile grew even more bitter. We can't help it. Presently, all sorts of sects, clans, independent cultivators, and even some geniuses on the monstrous genius rankings have come to Azure Prefecture to plunder. My Immortal Inn is powerless against them. Yi Xian thought for a moment, and then he said, Senior, how about this? Don't close the Drunken Immortal Inn of the state of Jiang. The personnel and materials of the Drunken Immortal Inn of the other kingdoms can be transported to the state of Jiang. As for the safety of the Drunken Immortal Inn, my Blue Waves Academy will protect it. The sixth floor master looked directly at Yi Xian. Young friend Yi, do you know that doing this is very likely to cause the state of Jiang to become the target of public criticism? It might even become the target of countless sects and clans. Yi Xian nodded. I know. The sixth floor master was slightly puzzled. Then what about you? Yi Xian smiled and said, the Drunken Immortal Inn has helped me more than once. Now that the Drunken Immortal Inn is in trouble, how can I stand idly by? I don't dare to guarantee the safety of the Drunken Immortal Inn, but I, Yi Xian, am willing to advance and retreat together with the Drunken Immortal Inn. As far as Yi Xian was concerned, a person shouldn't forget enmity, and even more so, he shouldn't forget kindness. He would always remember those who were bad to him, and similarly, he would always remember those who were good to him. The sixth floor master looked at Yi Xian, and there was a trace of complexity in his eyes. In fact, when the Drunken Immortal Inn supported Yi Xian, he was opposed to it. That was because Yi Xian was in a whirlpool, and if the Drunken Immortal Inn interfered, it was very likely that it would bring about a disaster. Although he was opposed to it, when everyone decided to support it, he didn't say anything. And now, the facts proved that the decision of the Drunken Immortal Inn was right. It wasn't because of Yi Xian's help this time, but rather because of Yi Xian's talent and potential. With Yi Xian's talent and potential, he would definitely be able to go very far in the future. The further Yi Xian went in the future, the more benefits the Drunken Immortal Inn would be able to go. Not to mention the future, the Drunken Immortal Inn in Qingzhou would already be able to benefit from it. Currently, the two biggest forces in Qingzhou were Great Cloud Empire and Ashy Waves Academy. Ashy Waves Academy had Yi Xian and the Ashy Waves Dao soldiers. If the headquarters of the Drunken Immortal Inn didn't send people over, the Drunken Immortal Inn would be far inferior to Ashy Waves Academy in Qingzhou. The current Ashy Waves Academy was really strong, especially the Ashy Waves Dao soldiers. They were definitely not inferior to the Dao soldiers of Drunken Immortal Inn in the Central Divine region. After discussing with Yi Xian, the sixth-floor master immediately went to inform the Drunken Immortal Inn in Qingzhou and asked them to hurry to Jiang Country. As for Yi Xian, he boarded the cloud ship with little Tuoba and rushed back to Jiang Country. On the deck of the cloud ship, Yi Xian and little Tuoba stood at the bow. Below the cloud ship was a wide river, and on both sides of the river were unbroken mountains. From time to time, birds could be seen flying over the mountains. Little Tuoba placed her hands on the pole of the ship and looked down at the mountains and rivers below. She was in a daze as if she was thinking about something. Yi Xian gently pulled little Tuoba's sleeve. This chapter is not over. Please continue to the next page. What are you thinking about? Little Tuoba came back to her senses and looked at Yi Xian. I have been here for a few days, but my father hasn't come to find me. Has he gone to give birth to another one? Yi Xian, little Tuoba suddenly said angrily, definitely. I knew it. He must have gone to give birth to another one. Humph, I know he has long disliked me. He always says I am a prodigal. Isn't his home my home? Is there a problem with me squandering my own home? I am not even angry, so why should he be angry? Yi Xian shook his head. This girl's logic was too terrifying. Can't keep up. Can't keep up. Little Tuoba suddenly sighed in a low voice. My father has such an outstanding daughter like me, but he still dislikes this and that. I feel sad for him. Yi Xian, little Tuoba shook her head. Don't think about him. As she spoke, she looked at Yi Xian. Little Yi, there is also a Blue Waves Academy in the Divine Central Continent. What does our Blue Waves Academy have to do with them? Yi Xian shook his head. It doesn't matter. We are us, and they are them. Tuoba blinked. What are you planning to do by yourself? Yi Xian smiled and said, you can say that. Little Tuoba gave Yi Xian a thumbs up. You have guts. No wonder you could see how outstanding I am the moment you saw me. Facts have proven that although my friends are not as outstanding as me, they are still capable. Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. This girl seemed to be praising others, but she was actually praising herself in a roundabout way. Perhaps she did not even realize it herself. She was extraordinarily strong in her heart. At this moment, a man suddenly appeared in front of the cloud ship. He had a pair of huge black wings on his back, like the wings of a rock. There were 3 more cloud ships behind him. The man sized up Yi Xian and little Tuoba. Are the 2 of you from the Divine Central Continent? Yi Xian was about to speak when little Tuoba suddenly said with some excitement, are you here to rob us? Yi Xian, the man glanced at little Tuoba with a hint of fear in his eyes. You must be joking. Danger. This was the feeling that Yi Xian and little Tuoba gave the man. Little Tuoba immediately lost interest when she saw that the man was not here to rob them. She leaned against the pole and played with the small hammer in her hand. From time to time, she would glance at the man. No one knew what she was thinking. Ever since she followed Yi Xian, she had become a little addicted to robbing. At this moment, the man suddenly said, are the 2 of you going to Ning Country? Ning Country? Yi Xian frowned slightly. What do you mean? The man was slightly surprised. Don't you know? It's said that the king of Ning Country, Tuoba Yen, has a connate charm body. If you have sex with him, your cultivation will be greatly enhanced. The Joyful Union sect and Joyful sect have already gone to the Ning Country to capture this person and refine him into a human cauldron. At this point, the man smiled sinisterly. It's said that the king of Ning Country is an outstanding beauty. She's a rare beauty. If we can, the man's voice stopped abruptly because a sword had pierced through his glabella. The man stared at Yi Xian in horror. Yi Xian's expression was cold, and his body exuded a cold killing intent. He stabbed forward with the sword in his right hand and said fiercely, "Who the F***ck dares to touch my woman?" With that, he slashed down with his sword. Chi! The man's head instantly flew off. P.S. Today's third update. Let's talk about the recent situation. I'm still in the hospital. I'm not here to act pitiful. It's just that I've been busy with family matters recently. I'm helpless about the updates. I'm really helpless because I only have time to update at night recently. When I write this, it's 12:20 a.m. I can only say that I'll work hard and try to keep updating. Everyone, I'm sorry. End of this chapter. Chapter 208. The man's head flew far away. His eyes were wide open, and it was clear that he had died with a grievance. In the air, little Tuoba waved her hand, and the man's spatial ring flew into her hand. She did not look at the spatial ring and instead looked at Yi Xian nearby. At that moment, Yi Xian held the spirit elegant sword that was dripping with blood, and the killing intent he exuded was almost tangible. Little Tuoba walked to Yi Xian's side and asked softly, "Little Yi, what's wrong?" Yi Xian shook his head. "We're not returning to the nation of Jiang for now. We're going to the nation of Ning." With that, he turned to return to the cloud ship. At that moment, over a dozen people suddenly rushed out from the 3 cloud ships nearby. All of them were at the Divine Combination realm. These people were extremely fast, and they arrived around Yi Xian and little Tuoba in an instant, surrounding them. A young man walked out from the group of people. He held a spear in his hand and glanced at little Tuoba before looking at Yi Xian. "You killed my men?" Yi Xian turned to face the young man. "Is there a problem?" The young man narrowed his eyes. "I believe you're from the Divine Central Continent." "I, Wu Jun, know some people in the Divine Central Continent. I even know a few on the demon-level geniuses list." Yi Xian pointed his sword at the distant horizon. Scram! The young man narrowed his eyes, and a cold glint flashed through them. "You're not going to give me any face?" "Since that's the case." At that moment, Yi Xian suddenly leaped up and slashed down with his sword. The young man's pupils constricted, and he thrust the spear in his hand upwards. The spear was like thunder, shaking the heavens. The sword arrived. Boom! The collision of the spear and sword was like a clap of thunder, and the echoes instantly spread to the surroundings. At the same time, a figure retreated rapidly in the air. Everywhere he passed, his body would shatter the air. This figure was none other than the young man. With this retreat, he retreated 40 to 50 feet. The moment he stopped, the spear in his hand shattered, and a trace of blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. The young man looked at Yi Xian with a solemn expression. Yi Xian was just about to attack again when the young man suddenly said, "Please wait, we'll leave immediately." After he finished speaking, he turned around and fled. His speed was extremely fast, and he disappeared into the horizon in the blink of an eye. The people around Yi Xian and little demon Tuoba also fled one after another. Yi Xian didn't chase after him because he didn't want to waste any time. His top priority now was to get to Ning country as soon as possible. Although the Ning nation was considered a powerful nation in Green Province, there was still a gap between it and the sects and aristocratic families of the Central Divine Continent. He had to get to Ning country as soon as possible. Soon, Yi Xian and Tuoba returned to the cloud ship and headed straight for Ning nation. After Yi Xian and little monster Tuoba left, the young man, Wu Jun, and the others stopped. At this moment, all of their expressions were extremely solemn. Especially Wu Jun. If he hadn't exerted his full strength during that collision just now, then that strike would have been sufficient to take his life. A man by Wu Jun's side asked, "Big brother, who was that swordsman? How terrifying." Wu Jun shook his head. "I don't know. He's probably attained the Sword Master realm. A Sword Master at such a young age is definitely renowned even in the Central Divine Continent, but I've never heard of him. Could it be that he's from Pine Prefecture? The man by Wu Jun's side shook his head. How could such a monstrous genius possibly exist in a small place like Pine Prefecture? Wu Jun spoke coldly. Why is it impossible? Isn't Anlanxiu from Pine Prefecture? Anlanxiu. The expressions of everyone in the surroundings turned solemn when they heard these 3 words. Presently, there was no one in the Central Divine Continent who didn't know this name. After a short while, Wu Jun shook his head. No matter what, it's best to be careful. Go investigate later and get to know the monstrous geniuses of Pine Prefecture in detail. While we're in the outside world, we absolutely must find out about Dao Yi, and that's who we can touch and who we can't. All of them nodded, and it didn't take long for their group to vanish. On the boat, Yi Xian and Taba stood at the front of the boat. Yi Xian's expression was extremely gloomy, and no one knew what he was thinking. Taba pulled on Yi Xian's sleeve and said softly, "Little Yi Xian, don't worry. We'll definitely be able to make it in time if we rush over right now." Yi Xian nodded slightly. "I hope so." When he spoke up to hear, he seemed to have thought of something, and he turned to look at Taba. "Little demon, do all the sects and clans of the Central Divine Continent act so fearlessly?" Taba shook his head. They naturally wouldn't dare to act like that in the Central Divine Continent. Because those who can survive there aren't ordinary people. If they act so fearlessly, then they'll be dealt with sooner or later. Moreover, there are world protectors up there. Even though those fellows are insatiably greedy, they're still very deterring. When she spoke up to hear, she paused slightly and continued, "The main reason they act so fearlessly in Pine Prefecture is because they look down upon Pine Prefecture from the bottom of their hearts. They feel that Pine Prefecture and Azure Wave Prefecture are barbaric places. Moreover, the martial Dao civilization of these 2 prefectures really can't compare to the Central Divine Continent. Coupled with the fact that the world protectors of Pine Prefecture have headed to the Central Divine Continent, that's why they dare to act so fearlessly." Yi Xian nodded and said softly, "I understand." Taba continued, "I've heard of the Double Happiness sect and the Joyous sect. These 2 powers have some influence in the Central Divine Continent, but their reputations aren't good. Because they like to capture women and refine them into cultivation furnaces. Such a path of cultivation is similar to the Devil Dao. Actually, they're a branch of the Devil Dao. However, there are many experts of the Devil Dao in the Realm Guard Alliance. So long as these powers don't go too far, then they're usually fine." The Devil Dao. Yi Xian frowned slightly. "There's the Devil Dao as well?" Taba replied, "Of course. Besides the Devil Dao, there's the Demon Dao and even the Ghost Dao. In any case, it's quite complicated over there. As for the Double Happiness sect and the Joyous sect, they're not good people. We can just kill them when we see them." Yi Xian was speechless. The cloud boat sped up at Yi Xian's signal and headed straight for the kingdom of Ning. They encountered numerous cloud boats along the way. Most of the people on these boats were mercenaries. Some weren't very strong, but some were extremely strong. It was even to the extent that Yi Xian felt a trace of danger from them. Their destination was the kingdom of Ning. The kingdom of Ning was a country at any rate, so how shocking would its wealth be if it didn't have a leader? All of them were in a hurry because they were deeply afraid that they wouldn't even be able to eat the leftovers if they were late. During this time, there were some conflicts between these cloud boats. However, basically no one came to cause trouble for Little Demon Tuoba. This was because Little Demon Tuoba was standing on the bow of the boat. When she saw the cloud boats passing by, she waved her hands and shouted, "Are you guys robbing me? I have a lot of money." Saying that, she took out a large number of true-grade weapons and a pile of jade-grade spirit stones. However, what made Yi Xian dumbfounded was that no one came to cause trouble for her despite her ostentatious behavior. No one dared to. There were only 2 kinds of people who dared to call for people to rob them without the slightest scruple. One was an idiot with abnormal intelligence. The other was someone who was extremely strong and had absolute confidence in himself. Although little demon Tuoba seemed a little abnormal, no one dared to touch her after seeing her smash a pinnacle divine combination stage expert into minced meat with a single swing of her hammer. She was definitely pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger. Seeing that no one came to rob her, little demon Tuoba was a little depressed. Yi Xian suddenly asked, "Why don't you take the initiative to rob them?" Little demon Tuoba rolled her eyes at Yi Xian. "My father said that if people don't offend me, I won't offend them. If they don't offend me, I won't be too embarrassed to hit them. However, if they take the initiative to offend me, I won't be embarrassed to kill them." Yi Xian was slightly speechless. This girl even needed a reasonable reason to rob others. However, what she said made sense. If people don't offend me, I won't offend them. Although Yi Xian was also a bandit, if people didn't offend him, he wouldn't take the initiative to rob others. In other words, he and little demon Tuoba were actually the same kind of people. As if he thought of something, Yi Xian suddenly turned to little demon Tuoba. "No, little demon, you took the initiative to attack me. I didn't offend you." Little demon Tuoba blinked her eyes. "Did I?" Yi Xian nodded seriously. "Yes." Little demon Tuoba thought for a while and then said seriously, "This is a serious problem. I think we can put this problem aside for now and discuss it in the future." Yi Xian. Seeing that Yi Xian didn't chase after her, little demon Tuoba secretly heaved a sigh of relief. Actually, she didn't want to kill Yi Xian. She only wanted to stop Yi Xian because she would get money if she stopped Yi Xian from advancing. The reason why she pretended to want Yi Xian's life was because a girl had to pretend to be fierce when she was outside. If she didn't pretend to be fierce, she would be easily bullied. This was what her father had told her. The cloud ship sped up and was getting closer to Ning country. Ning country. At this moment, many strangers suddenly came to the imperial capital of Ning country. After these people entered the city, they didn't know their place at all. They robbed, killed, raped, and committed all kinds of crimes. For these people, without any restraints, coupled with their powerful strength, they could do anything they wanted. The Ning country didn't just stand by and watch. The imperial guards of the imperial palace and the most powerful golden guards of Ning country were sent out to suppress the experts of the divine central country who had entered the city. Unfortunately, it wasn't very effective because the effect of the army was greatly reduced in the city. Moreover, these people were extremely powerful, so the imperial capital of Ning country became more and more chaotic. Some mercenaries from the divine central country even broke into the imperial palace. In the main hall of the imperial palace, Tuoba Yen sat on the dragon throne with an extremely gloomy expression. Behind her were an old woman and an old man. At this moment, a man in black entered the hall and knelt on one knee. "Your Majesty, some experts from the divine central country are besieging the imperial palace from all directions. The north gate has fallen, and the south gate can only hold out for an hour at most, report." Another man in black suddenly rushed in and knelt on one knee. "Your Majesty, the Li, Yu, and Feng families in the city have openly rebelled and participated in the siege of the imperial palace." On the dragon throne, Tuoba Yen clenched his fists, his face as gloomy as still water. No one knew what he was thinking. On the cloud ship, Yi Xian, who was standing at the bow, suddenly said, "Little demon, guard me. No one is allowed to enter my room." After saying that, he returned to his private room. After entering the private room, he immediately entered the primordial pagoda. He opened his right hand and 8 swords appeared in front of him. After a moment of silence, Yi Xian picked up a sword and stabbed it into his body. Chapter 209. Devour. Before devouring the swords, Yi Xian was actually somewhat hesitant. This was because using the 8 swords as flying swords could greatly increase his battle prowess. But on second thought, no matter how strong the 8 swords were, they wouldn't allow him to kill a Dharma realm expert. If he wanted to kill a Dharma realm expert, he had to break through to the Divine Union realm. Previously, because of Kuraki Academy and Dark World, Mo Wuji didn't dare to break through to the God Fusion realm. Because the moment he broke through to the God Fusion realm, the myriad laws realm experts of Kuraki Academy and Dark World wouldn't need to suppress their cultivation to attack him. Apart from that, his cultivation realm wasn't that stable before, so he temporarily chose not to break through to the Divine Union realm. But after the battle at Kuraki College, he could be said to have reached his limit. He had a new understanding of the Sword Tao. To him, the time had come. After devouring a sword, Yi Xian instantly felt boundless energy radiate from his body. Very soon, the spirit elegance sword in his body trembled slightly. In an instant, the energy surged towards the spirit elegance sword like a tidal wave. About 15 minutes after the spirit elegance sword devoured it, an even purer energy radiated from the spirit elegance sword and spread towards his limbs and bones. Divine Union Realm. The so-called Divine Union Realm was about the perfect fusion of the physical body and the soul. The physical body and the soul were like 5 fingers. The 5 fingers were naturally connected, but that didn't mean that they could use the 5 fingers flexibly. The soul and body were naturally connected, but it could still be improved. This was the so-called Divine Union Realm. Reaching Divine Union, the body and soul would improve, and the body would also undergo a qualitative transformation. What Yi Xian needed to do now was to improve his body and soul and transform again. About an hour later, Yi Xian devoured another sword. Just like that, within the prison pagoda, Yi Xian's aura began to grow stronger. Outside the prison pagoda, little demon Tuoba was somewhat bored. She sat on the pole and her 2 small feet floated outside the boat. Right at this moment, a cloud ship suddenly appeared behind them. That cloud ship was extremely swift, and in a short while, it had surpassed the cloud ship that she and Yi Xian were on. After being surpassed, little demon Tuoba turned around to look at that cloud ship. A man in embroidered robes was standing on that cloud ship. The man was dressed very luxuriously. He wore an embroidered robe with a faintly glowing spirit jade tied to his waist. One look and anyone could tell that he was either rich or noble. As though sensing little demon Tuoba's gaze, the man suddenly turned his head to look at little demon Tuoba. His eyes lit up when he saw little demon Tuoba. He gently pressed down with his right hand, causing the cloud ship to instantly slow down. The brocade-robed man looked at little demon Tuoba and smiled. "May I know how I should address you, young lady?" Little monster Tuoba asked calmly. "Is there anything you need?" The man in embroidered clothes smiled and said, "When I first saw you, I felt that you were like a celestial being. To be honest, I want to be friends with you. What do you think?" "Friend?" Tuoba blinked. "You want to be friends with me?" The man in embroidered clothes nodded. "If I can be friends with you, it would be my honor for 3 lifetimes." Little demon Tuoba glanced at the man in embroidered clothes and said calmly, "If you want to be friends with me, aren't you going to express it?" "Express it." The man in embroidered clothes' expression stiffened slightly. A moment later, he seemed to have thought of something and his lips curled up slightly. A woman that could be settled with money was naturally the best. It could save him a lot of trouble. The man in embroidered clothes flicked his finger and a card flew to little demon Tuoba. "There are 500,000 gold coins in this card. Consider it my greeting gift to you, young lady." 500,000 gold coins. Little demon Tuoba took a look at the card and shook her head with a sigh. "No wonder my father said that it's hard to find a soulmate in this world." Little Yezi did not hesitate to spend hundreds of millions of gold coins to be friends with me. It seems that little Yezi is my soulmate. As she spoke, she flicked her finger and the card flew to the man in embroidered clothes. "Let's go. I, little demon Tuoba, only make friends with people with good foresight, like little Yezi. As for you, you're too poor. I don't want to be friends with you." The man in embroidered clothes narrowed his eyes. "Are you not going to give me any face?" His voice was slightly cold and carried a trace of threat. Hearing this, little demon Tuoba turned to look at the man in embroidered clothes. Without any nonsense, she suddenly smashed out with her hammer. The man in embroidered clothes' expression changed drastically. His body trembled and he retreated dozens of feet to the left. The cloud ship that he was originally on instantly cracked and turned into powder. Seeing this scene, the man in embroidered clothes' face turned slightly pale. The moment an expert made a move, it was obvious whether or not he was an expert. He knew that he had offended someone he should not have offended. The man in embroidered clothes hurriedly bowed slightly to little demon Tuoba. I hope that young lady is magnanimous enough to forgive me for my previous offense. Little demon Tuoba stretched out her small hand. Leave the things here. You can leave. The man in embroidered clothes. About 15 minutes later, little demon Tuoba sat on the pole and was counting a large pile of things. This is little Yezi's. This is mine. This is little Yezi's. This is mine. This is little Yezi's. And this is also for little Yezi. One day later. Ning country's imperial capital. At this moment, the imperial capital of the Ning kingdom was in chaos. Because too many profounders from the central divine prefecture had surged into the city. Ordinary soldiers were utterly helpless against these cultivators from the central divine prefecture. However, that wasn't the main reason. The main reason was that the spirit energy in Pine Prefecture had dried up, and the hearts of the people were in chaos. It was especially so for the imperial capital of the Ning kingdom. The spirit energy there was vanishing at a shocking speed every single day. In the beginning, the imperial capital of the Ning kingdom was barely able to maintain its peace with the suppression of the imperial family of the Ning kingdom, and no major trouble had arisen. However, once these cultivators from the central divine prefecture entered the imperial capital, the situation had instantly gone out of control. Because ordinary soldiers weren't able to deal with these fellows from the central divine prefecture at all. When they saw these fellows from the central divine prefecture act recklessly and cause trouble in the city, some people in the city couldn't restrain themselves any longer. So, the entire city had gradually fallen into chaos. It wasn't just the city that was in chaos, even the imperial palace of the Ning kingdom was in imminent danger. At this moment, 2 of the 4 city gates of the imperial palace had fallen into enemy hands, and it was the cultivators from the central divine prefecture who had attacked those city gates. There were mercenaries, disciples of the clans, and independent cultivators amongst them. Moreover, they'd traveled so far to Pine Prefecture for the sake of getting rich. Plunder like crazy. That was what they wanted to do. That was exactly what they wanted to do. In addition to the cultivators from the central divine prefecture, there were also cultivators from the Ning kingdom itself. Among them were independent cultivators and ordinary cultivators, but most were disciples of the aristocratic families. Within the borders of the Ning kingdom, the Ning family was undoubtedly the #1 aristocratic family. Apart from the Ning family, there were also some other ancient aristocratic families. These families didn't choose to stand with the Ning kingdom at its most critical moment, but instead chose to take advantage of the situation. In the eyes of these aristocratic families and countless others, the Ning kingdom was bound to fall. This was because the Joyful Union sect and the Joyful sect from the Divine Central Divine Prefecture were going to attack the imperial family of the Ning kingdom. The Ning kingdom was considered a decent force in Pine Prefecture, but compared to these forces from the Divine Central Divine Prefecture, there was still a considerable gap. Coupled with the natural disaster and the depletion of spirit energy, it could be said that the Ning kingdom was in a hopeless situation. Under such circumstances, everyone wanted a piece of the pie. After all, it was a nation, and its domestic wealth was bound to be astonishing. In the main hall of the Ning kingdom's imperial palace, Tuoba Yen was still sitting on the dragon throne. Behind her stood the old woman and the black-robed old man. On both sides of her stood about 30 heavily armored guards with broadswords in their hands. The Golden Guards. These 30 people were the elite Golden Guards selected from the Golden Guards. Each of them had experienced hundreds of battles, and their combat strength could be said to be the strongest in the Ning kingdom. Tuoba Yen sat expressionlessly on the dragon throne. The old woman behind her suddenly stepped forward. "Your Majesty, let's go first." "Go?" Tuoba Yen said indifferently, those two sects' target is me. Where should we go? The old woman said solemnly, the two of us will risk our lives to ensure that your majesty leaves safely. What about the people and the soldiers in the city? Tuoba Yen chuckled. Abandon them? Inside the hall, the 30 elite golden guards knelt in unison. We are willing to die for your majesty. Tuoba Yen shook her head slightly. Abandon the people in the city and the soldiers of the Ning kingdom. We cannot do it. With that, she stood up. Let's go. Let's go meet these people from the Divine Central Divine Prefecture. By the time she finished speaking, she had already walked out of the hall, followed closely by the 30 golden guards. Inside the hall, the old woman and the old man exchanged glances, sighed softly, and followed. Outside the hall, the entire imperial palace had already fallen, for the Dharma realm experts had already made their move. Inside the imperial palace, all the soldiers had retreated to the entrance of the hall. In front of these soldiers were more than 100 experts from the Divine Central Divine Prefecture, including 3 Dharma realm experts. In addition, there were more than 200 people around them, most of whom were native cultivators of the Ning kingdom. The reason why the palace fell so quickly was because of the 10,000 laws realm powerhouses. Under normal circumstances, Dharma realm experts could not act at will, especially when it came to the destruction of a country. But now that there was no realm protector in Azure province, these people had no scruples at all. In front of the group of experts from the Divine Central Divine Prefecture stood a middle-aged man dressed rather coquettishly, and an outstanding, skinny old man. The middle-aged man was wearing a red robe and had thick makeup on his face. He looked very seductive. The skinny old man was wearing a large red robe. On his red robe, there were some naked men and women. They looked very naked. At this moment, both of them were staring at Tuoba Yen, who was among the soldiers not far away. Their eyes were filled with undisguised greed and lust. The middle-aged man suddenly smiled evilly. It really is an inner charm body. If it can be developed, tsk tisk, the skinny old man grinned. Indeed, a rare inner charm body. This old man is willing to die for it, haha. At this moment, the old woman behind Tuoba Yen suddenly stepped forward. Everyone, His Majesty and State Scholar Yi Xian of the Jiang Kingdom look at each other. Please give him some face. Yi Xian? The middle-aged man frowned slightly. What kind of rubbish is this? Never heard of it. P.S. It's 2019. I'm finally 18. Happy New Year to everyone. Finally, some readers say that I'm still updating my novel even though my family is in the hospital. I'm not a man. I'm the only one in the family who has some income from writing. The hospital fees are unimaginable to ordinary people. Also, my brother is studying at home, and I'm paying for his tuition. I have to make a living too. Sincerely, I hope some readers don't go against me. I also want to thank the readers who have always supported me, such as Drunken Hongchen, Seventh Sister, Licking 100, Xiaoyao Z, and some readers who give me monthly votes every day but don't say much. You guys can be more high profile. Finally, I'm lucky to have met you guys. Chapter 210. Hearing the middle-aged man's words, the old woman behind Tuoba Yan's face sank. She didn't expect that these people wouldn't even give face to Yi Xian. It should be known that Yi Xian was undoubtedly the most famous in Qingzhou. Apart from Great Cloud Empire, Blue Waves Academy could be said to be the strongest force in Qingzhou. Apart from Blue Waves Academy, Yi Xian's strength was also very frightening. It could be said that Yi Xian had a certain deterrent force in the entire Qingzhou. However, she didn't expect that these people wouldn't give face at all. Yi Xian? At this moment, the red-robed old man beside the middle-aged man frowned slightly. The middle-aged man looked at the red-robed old man. Do you know this person, Brother Jiang Yi? The old man named Jiang Yi shook his head. I don't know him. I have only heard of him. It is said that he had a conflict with Dark World and Kuraki Academy. Kuraki Academy even sent experts to Qingzhou. As for the final result, I don't know. Result. Apart from Qingzhou, the matter of Kuraki Academy didn't spread to the central divine continent. Because they had been suppressed by the Realm Protector, the death of 2 members of the Realm Protector Alliance was undoubtedly a great loss of face for the Realm Protector Alliance. They naturally wouldn't let this matter spread because it would affect the prestige of the Realm Protector Alliance. All along, Realm Protector Alliance couldn't be offended. But now, if people knew that 2 people from Realm Protector Alliance were killed, the prestige of Realm Protector Alliance would be greatly reduced in the hearts of people. Therefore, under the suppression of Realm Protector Alliance, except for a few major forces, no one knew what happened to Kuraki Academy. The coquettish middle-aged man suddenly smiled. Brother Jiangyi, rest assured. In Qingzhou, except for Great Cloud Empire, the other forces are just small shrimps. Without the Realm Protector, these forces are less than ants to us. Jiang Yi nodded slightly. That's true. Then, he looked at Tuoba Yen not far away with an obscene smile. This woman has an inner charm physique. This physique is really rare and can't be missed. Moreover, the Ning country's national strength is not weak. After we capture this woman, the Ning country's national treasury and the entire Ning country will be ours. We will have both the people and the wealth, haha. The coquettish middle-aged man chuckled. That's true. I never thought that I would be able to become an emperor after coming to this tiny azure province, haha. With that, he took a step forward. With this step, an invisible pressure suddenly swept towards Tuoba Yen and the others. Behind Tuoba Yen, the old woman and the old man suddenly stepped forward. The old woman raised her hand and struck. Boom! The pressure released by the coquettish middle-aged man instantly dissipated. The middle-aged man's gaze landed on the old woman. He smiled and said, interesting. As he spoke, he turned to look at the 2 old men not far away. You too, since you're here, it's only natural for you to contribute. I'll leave these 2 to you. How about it? The 2 elders looked at each other and nodded. Sure. With that, the 2 of them charged toward the old woman and the old man behind Tuoba Yen. Behind Tuoba Yen, the old woman said in a deep voice, "Take care, Your Majesty." As soon as she finished speaking, she and the old man beside her trembled, and they turned into a blur as they shot out. Soon, the 4 Dharma realm experts began fighting in the air. Below, the coquettish middle-aged man and Jiang Yi walked towards Tuoba Yen. None of the soldiers flinched in front of Tuoba Yen. Although they knew that they were not even comparable to ants before the middle-aged man and the old man, they did not retreat. Behind them was the king of the Ning country, the person they were loyal to. Tuoba Yen was expressionless. That was because she was holding 2 talismans that emitted heat energy in her wide sleeves. The blazing explosion talisman. It was equivalent to a heaven-grade spiritual weapon, but it was a one-time use item. Although it was a one-time use item, its power was extraordinary. If used well, it could even kill a Dharma realm expert. Of course, it would be difficult for her to live, or rather, she did not intend to live. Because she knew very well that living would be more painful than death. The coquettish middle-aged man moved closer and closer, and he didn't conceal the greed in his eyes as he gazed at Tuoba Yen. Tuoba Yen circulated her profound energy, and the pyroblast talismans in her hand shook violently and were about to explode. Meanwhile, a ray of light suddenly descended from the sky. Everyone in the surroundings looked up into the sky in succession. Tuoba Yen looked up as well. The speed of the sword light was extremely fast, like a falling meteor, incomparably swift. It didn't take long for the coquettish middle-aged man's expression to change. Because he noticed that the ray of light was actually targeting him. The middle-aged man's expression instantly turned icy cold, and then he tossed his right hand up lightly. In an instant, a pink ribbon shot into the sky and shot towards the ray of light. The sword arrived in midair. The pink ribbon forcefully blocked the ray of light, but it suddenly shook violently in the next moment. Bang! The pink ribbon was blasted flying back to the middle-aged man. Meanwhile, the ray of light had arrived above him. The middle-aged man's pupils constricted slightly. This time, he didn't choose to resist it head-on, and he flashed backward by over 30 m. He'd just retreated when a young man appeared in front of Tuoba Yen. It was none other than Yi Xian. On the other hand, little demon Tuoba was sizing up the surroundings curiously by Yi Xian's side. Yi Xian pointed the spirit beauty sword at the middle-aged man nearby. "Wait a moment. I'll be right back for your head." As soon as he finished speaking, he turned to look at Tuoba Yen. At this moment, Tuoba Yen was looking at him as well. Yi Xian grinned. "Surprised? Surprised?" Tuoba Yen didn't speak, but the pyroblast talisman in her sleeve gradually calmed down. Yi Xian hugged Tuoba Yen lightly. "Leave everything to me." As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and walked towards the coquettish middle-aged man nearby. Tuoba Yen gazed at Yi Xian's back silently. Meanwhile, little demon Tuoba suddenly walked over to Tuoba Yen and sized him up. "Your surname Tuoba as well?" Tuoba Yen looked at little demon Tuoba and nodded slightly. Little demon Tuoba grinned. "What a coincidence. My surname is also Tuoba." Tuoba Yen was speechless. Not far away, Yi Xian walked towards the coquettish middle-aged man with the spirit beauty sword in his hand. At this moment, the spirit beauty sword was already middle grade. After devouring 8 swords, he did not reach the divine union realm. Hence, he looked for the 6th floor master to buy a true grade sword and 3 bright grade superior grade swords for him. He exchanged 2 heaven grade cultivation techniques for these 4 swords. To be honest, he felt his heart ache and was somewhat reluctant to part with 2 heaven grade martial techniques. However, he had no choice. He had to part with them even if he was reluctant. He had to reach the divine union realm. Only by reaching the divine union realm could he fight against a myriad Dharma realm expert. After devouring close to 11 bright grade superior grade swords and 1 true grade sword, he reached the divine union realm. Not only did he reach the divine union realm, but the spirit beauty sword also reached middle grade. After breaking through to the divine union realm, he wanted to find someone to spar with. He wanted to see if there was still a gap between him and the myriad Dharma realm. Opposite Yi Xian, the coquettish middle-aged man sized up Yi Xian and narrowed his eyes. "Sword master. You." Yi Xian suddenly raised his sword and charged forward. In an instant, a ray of sword light reached the center of the coquettish middle-aged man's brows. The speed of this sword was extraordinarily fast. Even the myriad Dharma realm middle-aged man's expression changed when he saw the speed and power of this sword. The middle-aged man suddenly opened his palm. In an instant, countless tiny pink ribbons flew out from his palm. These pink ribbons instantly wrapped around the spirit beauty sword in Yi Xian's hand. Yi Xian's sword could no longer advance. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly released his hand and threw a punch at the middle-aged man's head. A sinister look flashed in the middle-aged man's eyes. He did not dodge. Instead, he clenched his left hand into a fist and punched at Yi Xian's punch. Bam! The moment their fists collided, an explosion was heard. Yi Xian was sent flying. However, the moment Yi Xian was sent flying, Yi Xian's right hand suddenly grabbed the hilt of the spirit beauty sword. With the middle-aged man's strength, the spirit beauty sword broke free from the pink ribbons. At this moment, Yi Xian had already retreated 10 feet away. As soon as he stopped, Yi Xian stomped on the ground with his right foot and dashed forward. When Yi Xian charged at the middle-aged man, the spirit beauty sword in his hand suddenly exploded with a terrifying sword force. When he arrived at a position about 10 feet away from the middle-aged man, he raised his sword and slashed down. One sword to decide life and death. At this moment, the force in his sword grew like a volcano eruption. The power of this sword instantly surpassed the myriad Dharma realm and approached the Dharma defensive realm. When he saw Yi Xian's sword, the middle-aged man was shocked. This was because this sword had greatly exceeded his expectations. This wasn't a power that a divine union realm cultivator could achieve. Not daring to think too much, the middle-aged man hurriedly took half a step back. In the next moment, countless pink ribbons suddenly swept out from his body. These pink ribbons carried a pink air current that instantly drowned Yi Xian and his sword. There was a moment of silence. Boom! Those pink ribbons suddenly exploded. Immediately after, a figure retreated rapidly. It was the middle-aged man. The middle-aged man retreated for a full 10 feet without stopping. Along the way, the ground he retreated exploded inch by inch, forming a gully that was 10 feet deep. Everyone in the surroundings was stunned when they witnessed this scene. A divine union realm cultivator sent a myriad Dharma realm cultivator flying? Everyone was in disbelief. On the battlefield, after Yi Xian sent the middle-aged man flying, he didn't stop. The spirit beauty sword in his hand suddenly turned into a sword light and entered the sword case on his back. After a moment of silence, Yi Xian suddenly pointed at the middle-aged man. Hiss! A ray of sword light flashed. It was so fast that even the old man Jiang Yi couldn't see the trajectory of the sword clearly. The moment the spirit beauty sword flew out, the middle-aged man's expression changed drastically. He put his hands together and was about to attack, but at this moment, hiss! A sword had pierced through his forehead. The battlefield fell silent. Yi Xian walked to the middle-aged man with the sword case on his back. The middle-aged man hadn't died yet, and he stared fixedly at Yi Xian. Yi Xian suddenly punched the middle-aged man's face. Bang! The middle-aged man's head exploded before he could finish speaking, and blood splattered everywhere. Yi Xian sheathed the spirit beauty sword and said indifferently, "I'll kill whoever dares to touch my people." As soon as he finished speaking, he took the man's storage ring and turned to leave. Everyone, Genius 1 second to remember website. Mobile version. Chapter 211. A deathly silence filled the area. A divine union realm expert killing a myriad Dharma realm expert. Everyone was stunned. After all, there was a world of difference between a myriad Dharma realm expert and a divine union realm expert. No one would find it strange if a nether passage realm expert killed a divine union realm expert, because the gap between the two realms wasn't that great. However, the gap between the divine union realm and the myriad Dharma realm was enormous, and there was a qualitative difference. But now, a divine union realm expert had killed a myriad Dharma realm expert right in front of them. Elder Jiang Yi of the Joyful Union sect stared fixedly at Yi Xian, a solemn expression in his eyes. In Azure Province, it was extremely difficult for a divine union realm expert to kill a myriad Dharma realm expert, or perhaps it was practically impossible. But in the distant divine central continent, it wasn't rare for a divine union realm expert to kill a myriad Dharma realm expert. In theory, it was extremely possible for those in the top 10 of the monster rankings to do so. As for those in the top 5, they had a 100% chance of doing so. This meant that Yi Xian was at least at the level of those in the top 10 of the monster rankings. How could such a person be ordinary? But he was truly unwilling to give up now. A good cauldron was simply too important to their sect. Moreover, the Ning Kingdom had an enormous amount of wealth. He was truly unwilling to give up just like that. The solemn expression in Jiang Ye's eyes turned icy cold. The experts from the divine central continent all looked at Yi Xian with unfriendly expressions, and some of them didn't even bother concealing their killing intent. The Ning Kingdom's enormous wealth was right in front of them, so how could they give up just like that? Some of the native descendants of the Ning Kingdom did indeed intend to retreat. A person's reputation was like a tree's shadow, and Yi Xian's prestige in Azure Province was undoubtedly great. News of Yi Xian charging into the Chu Kingdom's imperial palace alone and killing the kings of the Chu Kingdom and the Yu Kingdom had practically spread throughout Azure Province. Who wouldn't fear him? Even Kuraki Academy was helpless against Yi Xian. Jiang Yi spoke abruptly when he saw the intention to retreat. The kingdom of Ning is a kingdom at any rate. How much wealth does it have accumulated? If you give up now, how long do you think you can survive in this azure province where the spiritual qi is exhausted? The others in the surroundings exchanged glances when they heard this, and they were slightly hesitant. Jiang Yi continued, he's just a divine combination realm cultivator. We have so many people on our side, why should we be afraid of him? Let's join forces to eliminate this person and share the wealth of the Ning nation. Isn't that perfect? The others in the surroundings were instantly tempted when they heard Jiang Yi. The wealth of the Ning kingdom. What was the purpose of these people coming here? Naturally, it was for money. In this era of spiritual energy depletion, the most important thing was to stay alive, and to stay alive, one needed spirit stones, a lot of spirit stones. What are you afraid of? Right at this moment, a man suddenly stood out. He stared fixedly at Yi Xian, who was not far away, and said fiercely, "Isn't it just Yi Xian? He doesn't have 3 heads and 6 arms. There are so many of us. If we work together to kill him, but..." The man's voice stopped abruptly because a sword had suddenly appeared between his brows. The sword had appeared out of nowhere, and everyone was stunned. Only Jiang Yi and the other experts of the Dharma realm knew how the sword had appeared. The sword had flown out from the sword box on Yi Xian's back, and it was too fast. It was so fast that they could only see a blurry trajectory. At this moment, they realized that the sword was a mid-grade truth rank sword, and the sword box on Yi Xian's back was truth rank as well. A set of divine equipment. Under the gazes of everyone, Yi Xian walked over to the man who spoke earlier. Yi Xian grinned, "The wind was too strong earlier, so I didn't hear what you said clearly. Can you say it again?" The man looked at Yi Xian, and there was a mark on his forehead. "This chapter isn't finished, please continue to the next page." Cold sweat flowed down his back. He knew that Yi Xian was very strong, but he hadn't imagined that Yi Xian was strong to this extent that he couldn't even fight back. He shouldn't have stood out. At this moment, the man was filled with regret. Not daring to think too much, the man revealed an unnatural smile. "Yi, State Scholar Yi, I'm..." Yi Xian's sword suddenly stabbed forward. Qi. The spirit elegant sword instantly pierced between the man's brows, and the man's voice stopped abruptly. The man's eyes were wide open, and they were filled with resentment. Yi Xian said softly, "Sorry, my hand shook a little. Please forgive me." Don't forgive me? Hit me then." The man's body was trembling from anger. Yi Xian didn't waste any more time. He drew the spirit elegant sword and turned to walk toward Tuo Yen. Behind him, blood spurted out from between the man's brows, and he fell to the ground in an instant. Countless people in the field had expressions of fear. Even Jiang Yi had a trace of fear in his eyes. Even he had to be wary of Yi Xian's strength because his strength was similar to that of the coquettish middle-aged man from before. Since Yi Xian had the ability to kill the coquettish middle-aged man, then Yi Xian had the ability to kill him as well. That was why he hadn't made a move until now. Wait. Wait for someone to come. Yi Xian walked over to Tuo Yen, and Tuo Yen gazed at Yi Xian in silence. Yi Xian suddenly stretched out his hand and gently stroked Tuo Yan's face, and he said softly, "You've lost a lot of weight since we parted that day." Tuo Yen gazed at Yi Xian in silence, but her hands were slowly clenched tightly within her sleeves. Yi Xian suddenly gazed at a soldier by Tuo Yan's side. "Get a chair for my Yen, Don't let her tire herself out." The soldier was stunned, and then he hurriedly turned around and ran over. It didn't take long for a few soldiers to carry a dragon chair over to Tuo Yan's back. Yi Xian wrapped his arms around Tuo Yan's shoulders and made her sit on the dragon chair. Tuo Yen still remained silent. Meanwhile, Tuo Yen suddenly walked over to Tuo Yen and grinned, "I'm tired as well. Let's squeeze." As she spoke, she sat down by Tuo Yan's side. The dragon chair was very large, and it was entirely capable of seating 2 people. Yi Xian raised his head and glanced up into the sky. At this moment, the 4 Dharma realm experts were still locked in battle, and both sides were evenly matched. Yi Xian was just about to attack when a strand of divine sense suddenly pressed down upon him. It was the pressure of Jiang Ye's divine sense. Yi Xian gazed at Jiang Yi, who stood nearby. "Then I'll deal with you first." As soon as he finished speaking, he stomped his right foot on the ground. The instant his foot touched the ground, his entire body transformed into a shadow that shot out explosively. At the same time, a strand of sword light instantly arrived before Jiang Yi. Jiang Yi, who was aware of Yi Xian's strength, naturally didn't dare to be careless. At the moment Yi Xian attacked, a red mirror suddenly appeared in his hand. His profound energy surged into the mirror, and the red mirror trembled slightly. A strand of red light surged out like a blazing flame, instantly drowning Yi Xian's sword light. Boom! 2 figures retreated repeatedly. It was Yi Xian and Jiang Yi. Countless sword lights and flames sputtered between the two of them, and the ground around them was a mess. As for the others in the surroundings, they retreated explosively and didn't dare to get too close. As soon as Yi Xian stopped, the spirit grace sword in his hand suddenly flew into the sword case behind him. In the next moment, Yi Xian took a step forward and pointed a finger forward. Swish! A strand of sword light slashed through the battlefield. At the moment the sword light appeared, Jiang Ye's expression changed drastically. He suddenly let go of the red mirror in his right hand, and his left hand formed a strange seal. In an instant, the red mirror before him actually started burning. This chapter isn't finished, please continue. Rise! Meanwhile, Yi Xian's flying sword had arrived, and it directly slashed onto the burning red mirror. Bang! A strand of dark red flames suddenly erupted from the red mirror. However, the flames weren't able to devour Yi Xian's sword light. Conversely, the flames were directly suppressed by Yi Xian's sword light as soon as they appeared. For a time, the sword and mirror were actually in a stalemate. But in next to no time, the spirit grace sword suddenly flew back and directly entered the sword case behind Yi Xian. But in the next moment, it flew out once more, and this time, its speed was even faster than before. This sword slashed onto the red mirror once more. Bang! Along with an explosion, the red mirror was blasted flying, and Jiang Yi was blasted flying as well. The red mirror carried Jiang Yi along as it flew over 100 m away, yet Jiang Yi hadn't stopped when a sword slashed over once more like a bolt of lightning. Jiang Ye's expression changed drastically, and he raised the red mirror with both hands and pushed it forward. Bang! The red mirror shook violently and directly cracked apart. At the same time, Jiang Yi and the cracked red mirror were blasted over 100 m away once more. As soon as he stopped, the spirit grace sword slashed over once more. Jiang Yi was horrified in his heart. At this moment, he had no other choice but to use the red mirror to block it once more. The sword arrived. Bang! The red mirror shook violently, and then it directly exploded apart. The formidable force instantly blasted Jiang Yi, who was behind the red mirror, flying over 30 m away. However, he hadn't even stopped when Yi Xian suddenly charged forward swiftly with his sword in hand. This charge directly arrived above Jiang Yi, and then he suddenly slashed down with the spirit grace sword in both hands. A single strike to decide life and death. There was no doubt that this strike was meant to kill with a single strike. Sensing the power in Yi Xian's strike, Jiang Yi was horrified. He pulled with both hands, and a golden talisman suddenly appeared above his head. Yi Xian's sword happened to slash onto this talisman. Bang! With a loud explosion, Yi Xian's entire body was blasted away. Over 100 m away, Yi Xian had just landed on the ground when the ground beneath his feet cracked open. A smear of blood slowly flowed out from the corner of his mouth. Yi Xian wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and raised his head to look at Jiang Yi, who wasn't far away. At this moment, the golden talisman in front of Jiang Yi had already started burning and was slowly disappearing. Jiang Yi's heart was bleeding as he watched the golden talisman slowly disappear. He had spent close to 10 million supreme-grade spirit stones to purchase this life-saving golden talisman. 10 million supreme-grade spirit stones. In the past, 10 million supreme-grade spirit stones wasn't considered a lot, but now, 10 million supreme-grade spirit stones was undoubtedly a huge sum of money. The loss was too great. Jiang Yi raised his head to look at Yi Xian, who wasn't far away, and said fiercely, "You meddlesome B*****, this old man will definitely tear you to pieces." As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly turned his head to look at the distant palace. There, close to 100 cavalrymen were galloping over, and wherever they passed, the ground would directly burn. And the leader was a woman in silver armor. Seeing this scene, Jiang Yi was stunned for a moment, and then he suddenly laughed out loud. "Yi Xian, although my people haven't arrived yet, there are many who want your Ning kingdom to perish. This cavalryman's momentum is like a rainbow, and one look and you can tell that they are the elites of 100 battles. This Ning kingdom is doomed. P.S. Today, a reader found me and scolded me as soon as he added me. He said that I was shameless and plagiarized the invincible sword realm. He even showed me a screenshot and said that the world prison pagoda appeared in the invincible sword realm. He said that I didn't have a profession to obtain it, so I can't create it. I was stunned for a long time. In the end, I found out that what he saw was a pirated version, and the author of the pirated version was actually not me. I said that the invincible sword realm was written by me, but he didn't believe me. Moreover, he even wanted to report me. What should I do? Waiting online. End of this chapter. Chapter 212. Yi Xian's expression instantly turned slightly strange when he heard Jiang Ye's words. Outside the imperial palace, the cavalrymen marched in an orderly manner, and every single one of them emanated a fierce murderous aura as if they were born to kill. Just their murderous aura was enough to strike fear into the hearts of others. The cavalrymen were similar to the Black Flame Army of Great Cloud Empire, but there were also differences because they cultivated the unique murderous aura technique. The greater the murderous intent of the murderous aura technique, the stronger their combat strength would be. Even though there were only 100 of them, the aura and murderous intent they emanated was enough to move even the experts from the Central Divine Prefecture. They weren't weaker than some of the Dao soldiers of the Central Divine Prefecture. The cavalrymen were very swift, and they arrived in front of Yi Xian in the blink of an eye. Besides the silver-armored woman in the lead, all the other soldiers knelt on one knee and said in unison, "Greetings, Dean." Their voices were deafening like a bell. "Dean?" Everyone in the surroundings was dumbstruck. Are they Yi Xian's subordinates? Yi Xian felt rather gratified when he sensed the aura and imposing manner of the Dao soldiers of Blue Waves Academy. This was a Dao soldier that he had spent a great deal of effort to forge. He had spent a great deal of effort to forge this Dao soldier, and this Dao soldier did not disappoint him. It could be said that these Dao soldiers weren't the slightest bit weaker than the Black Flame Army of Great Cloud Empire. Meanwhile, the silver-armored woman walked over to Yi Xian. She wore a helmet and a mask, so only her eyes could be seen. She was naturally Jiang Jiao, the commander of the cavalrymen. Jiang Jiao sized up Yi Xian. Divine Combination Realm? Yi Xian nodded, "I just arrived." Jiang Jiao nodded slightly, "You're the dean, so give the order." Yi Xian grinned and was about to speak, but little demon Tuoba suddenly coughed lightly, and then she walked over to Yi Xian's side with a slightly solemn expression. Little demon Tuoba. Yi Xian suddenly came to his senses and hastily introduced, "Little Nine, and everyone else, let me introduce you. This person beside me is called Little Demon Tuoba. She comes from the Central Divine Continent and is ranked 8th on the demon-level geniuses list. Right, she is also the Vice Dean of our Blue Waves Academy. When you see her, you must show the same respect as when you see me." The cavalrymen were startled, but they quickly regained their senses. They rose to their feet and bowed deeply at Little Demon Tuoba. "Greetings, Vice Dean." A satisfied smile instantly arose on the corners of Tuoba's mouth when she saw everyone greet her. She nodded and spoke in a slightly old-fashioned manner. There's no need to be so courteous. At this point, she suddenly looked at Yi Xian and whispered, "What should I say next?" Yi Xian said seriously, "Let them kill all the people from the divine central continent." Little monster Tuoba nodded. "Actually, I think so too." Yi Xian, little demon Tuoba suddenly pointed angrily at the experts from the divine central continent in the distance. "You scoundrels, instead of staying in the divine central continent, you came to Azure Prefecture to commit evil. Do you still have a conscience? Do you still have humanity? I'm telling you, the weather will be cloudy today." At this point, she hastily looked at Yi Xian. "What should I say next?" Everyone, Yi Xian's face was also full of black lines. "Don't say anything else. Let's fight." Little demon Tuoba shook her head. No, I've read a book. It says that before a battle, momentum is very important. We must overwhelm them with momentum. Just watch me." At this point, she turned to look at the nearby experts from the divine central continent. "I'm telling you, what you're doing is wrong, you, cut the *king crap." At this moment, a man suddenly stepped forward and said fiercely, "If you want to fight, let's fight. What's with all the nonsense? There are so many of us, do you think we're afraid of you? You." Right at this moment, little demon Tuoba suddenly tossed the hammer in his hand. Bang! The man didn't even have time to react before he was blasted flying. In midair, his body exploded into pieces, and blood sprayed everywhere. Everyone, little demon Tuoba glanced coldly at the battlefield, and she was very angry. "I'd intended to subdue the enemy without a fight, but now it would seem like all of you trash don't deserve to live." As soon as she finished speaking, she charged forward with her hammer in hand. The blue-tied Dao soldiers charged after her as well. The experts from the divine central continent turned pale when they saw little demon Tuoba and the blue-tied Dao soldiers charge at them, and some even had the intention to retreat. Meanwhile, Jiang Yi suddenly spoke angrily from nearby, "We have 600 to 700 people, and they only have 100. Why should we be afraid of them? The weakest equipment these cavalrymen wear is at the light grade. If we kill them, all of us will become rich. Kill." As soon as he finished speaking, he charged forward. As for the experts from the divine central continent, they hesitated for a moment, but in the end, they couldn't resist the temptation of becoming rich, and they charged forward. In terms of numbers, Yi Xian's side was at a disadvantage indeed. However, it was only a disadvantage in terms of numbers. In terms of quality, Yi Xian's side had an advantage. Especially when they had little demon Tuoba. Although this girl was a little heartless, she was really strong. Even he didn't dare say that he could defeat her with absolute certainty. Little demon Tuoba took the lead and charged into the crowd. She swung her hammer wildly, and over a dozen people died on the spot in an instant. No one could withstand a single hit from her hammer. After all, she was a monster in the top 10 of the genius level rankings. As for the blue-tied Dao soldiers, they could be said to be invincible. They charged wildly, and no one could stop them wherever they passed. Not only were the blue-tied Dao soldiers powerful individually, but their equipment was also extremely terrifying. Ordinary experts couldn't harm them at all. The battle had just begun, but the situation was already clear. More than 100 blue-tied Dao soldiers were forcefully suppressing hundreds of experts from the divine central continent. In truth, apart from the blue-tied Dao soldiers' own strength and little demon Tuoba's, there was another reason. The experts from the divine central continent weren't organized, and they scattered as soon as they charged. Moreover, each of them harbored ulterior motives and wanted others to risk their lives while they reaped the benefits. When facing an ordinary army, they were naturally successful in every endeavor because their individual strength far surpassed that of ordinary soldiers, and they could win easily. However, what they encountered now was a team of well-trained Dao soldiers with incomparably powerful individual strength. There was only one thought in the minds of these blue-tied Dao soldiers: kill. Jiang Yi charged at the front. His target was the blue-tied Dao soldiers, but before he could make a move, Yi Xian charged in front of him with a sword in hand and slashed down viciously. Bam! Jiang Yi was sent flying nearly 1,000 feet away. As soon as he stopped, a flying sword suddenly flew out from the sword case on Yi Xian's back. In the blink of an eye, the flying sword was in front of him. A flying sword again. Jiang Yi was horrified. This time, he didn't dare to take the blow head-on. He forcefully dodged to the left, but he was still a little too slow. Rip! An arm flew off, blood spurting out like a fountain. After the elegant spirit sword severed Jiang Ye's arm, it immediately flew back into the sword case. The sword didn't fly out again because Jiang Yi had already retreated outside the imperial palace, putting a considerable distance between them. Although the flying sword could reach him at this distance, its power would be greatly reduced. Jiang Yi stared fixedly at Yi Xian. Aside from resentment, there was also deep fear in his eyes. Yi Xian's flying sword was too terrifying. At this moment, the experts from the divine central continent were beginning to crumble. After witnessing the terror of the blue-tied Dao soldiers, some of the experts from the divine central continent had already begun to flee. They were here to seek wealth, not to throw away their lives. When they saw someone flee, the remaining people immediately lost their will to fight and began to flee as well. Thus, some of the experts from the divine central continent fled, while others died. Jiang Ye's expression was extremely unsightly. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly charged forward. Jiang Ye's expression changed drastically, and he didn't even think about it before drifting back. He retreated 50 to 60 meters, and as soon as he stopped, Yi Xian appeared where he had been standing earlier. The distance between the two of them was still very large. Yi Xian frowned. With his current strength, he could defeat an expert of the myriad Dharma realm, but if Jiang Yi didn't fight and just kept dodging, then he really couldn't do anything to him. Ignoring Jiang Yi, Yi Xian turned around. The elegant spirit sword suddenly flew over 30 meters away from the sword case on his back, and the sword pierced through the forehead of an expert from the divine central continent. It didn't take long for almost 200 corpses to appear on the battlefield. The rest of the experts from the divine central continent had fled. As for the disciples of the Ning kingdom, they'd fled when they saw that Jiang Yi was no match for Yi Xian. They knew that with Yi Xian around, the Ning kingdom wouldn't perish for the time being. In the air, the two myriad Dharma realm experts from the divine central continent stopped as well. There was no point in continuing the battle. However, the two of them and Jiang Yi didn't leave. Yi Xian couldn't be bothered with the three of them. He put away the elegant spirit sword and faced the nearby little monster Tuoba. Little monster, take our brothers and clean up the battlefield. Little monster Tuoba grinned brilliantly. All right, all right. As she spoke, she glanced at the blue waves Dao soldiers behind her. Clean up the battlefield. Everyone bowed slightly. If they'd respected little monster Tuoba before because of Yi Xian, then now, they respected her from the bottom of their hearts. This woman was truly too powerful. It could be said that without little monster Tuoba, it would have been impossible for them to end the battle so quickly. Little monster Tuoba had dealt with most of the stronger experts, and the experts from the divine central continent had been extremely wary of her. One strike to kill one. Who wouldn't be wary? In the azure firmament world, only the strong were worthy of respect. Little monster Tuoba was very proactive in cleaning up the battlefield. She'd already fallen in love with the feeling of robbing others. When Yi Xian arrived in front of Tuoba Yan, the golden insignia guards who'd been blocking Tuoba Yan's path immediately moved aside. Tuoba Yan looked at Yi Xian and was about to speak when Yi Xian suddenly took out a glowing scroll and handed it to her. Thunder Rush Incantation, a heaven-grade martial technique. This is for you. A heaven-grade martial technique. Tuoba Yan was stunned. Chapter 213. Heaven-grade martial skill. Not only Tuoba Yan, but many people were also stunned. Even the two 10,000 Dharma realm experts behind Tuoba Yen were taken aback. A heaven-ranked martial skill was extremely rare. It was truly priceless. It should be known that the imperial family of Ning country did not have a heaven-grade martial skill even after so many years. Not to mention Ning country, in the entire Qingzhou, only Kuraki Academy and Great Cloud Empire had it. But now, Yi Xian just casually gave it away. This was not ordinary generosity. Tuoba Yen looked straight at Yi Xian and did not speak. Yi Xian smiled and asked, "What's wrong?" "Why?" Tuoba Yen asked. "Why?" Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. He placed the scroll of heaven-grade martial skill in Tuoba Yan's hand. "There's no why. Just give it to me if you like it. It's that simple." Tuoba Yen looked at Yi Xian for a long time. Finally, she put away the scroll of heaven-grade martial skill. At this moment, little monster Tuoba had also finished cleaning up the battlefield. She smiled and came to Yi Xian. "Little Yi, this time's harvest is not bad." Yi Xian said with a smile, "Tell me about it." Tuoba's smile became brighter and brighter. "There are 2.9 billion gold coins and more than 7 million supreme-grade spirit stones. There are 17 clear-grade weapons and 72 supreme-grade spirit artifacts. There are also a lot of miscellaneous items, but none of them are very valuable. More than 7 million top-grade spirit stones." Yi Xian nodded slightly. Although this was not as much as what he obtained in Kuraki Academy, it was still a lot. Especially at this time, 7 million top-grade spirit stones was really an astonishing wealth. As if thinking of something, Yi Xian suddenly said, "Little monster, take out 1/3 and distribute it to the brothers." Little monster Tuoba glanced at the Blue Waves Dao soldiers not far behind her and immediately nodded, "Okay." As she spoke, she began to distribute. Those Blue Waves cavalrymen looked at each other in blank dismay. Obviously, they didn't expect that Yi Xian would allocate a sum of money to them. One should know that in Blue Waves Academy, they actually received military pay every month. Not only that, Blue Waves Academy also spent a huge amount of money to provide them with martial skills, equipment, elixirs, and cultivation resources. Their treatment was already very good. At this time, one of the Blue Waves cavalrymen suddenly stood up. "Dean, we have already taken enough. There is no need for these." Although they were a little tempted, they knew that they couldn't be too greedy. If he was too greedy, he might lose everything in the end. Yi Xian smiled and said, "All of you have contributed, so these are what you deserve. Not only this time, but for any future missions, if there are any spoils of war, you will get 1/3 of it. The remaining 2/3 will belong to the academy." "Yes, it's decided." That cavalryman still wanted to say something, but little monster Tuoba suddenly threw a storage ring to him. "All of you have contributed previously, so this is what you deserve. There is no need to say anything more." Seeing that Yi Xian had already made up his mind, that Blue Waves cavalryman didn't say anything else. After putting away the storage ring, over 100 Blue Waves cavalrymen bowed deeply to Yi Xian, then quietly retreated to the side. At this time, Tuoba Yen suddenly asked, "Can I borrow your Dao soldiers?" Yi Xian looked at Tuoba Yen, and Tuoba Yen said, "There are some experts from the Central Divine Continent in the city, ordinary soldiers can't deal with them." Yi Xian nodded, "Let your people take 50 cavalrymen to the city to clean up. You, little Jiao, the two of you follow me, I have something to discuss with you." Jiang Jiao suddenly pointed at Jiang Ye's group of 3 at the distant palace gate. "What about them?" Jiang Ye's group of 3 hadn't left, but the 3 of them stayed far away and didn't dare to approach. They were truly fearful of Yi Xian's flying sword. The old woman behind Tuoba Yen suddenly said, "It's fine, the 2 of us will just keep an eye on them." Yi Xian nodded, then walked towards the distant imperial palace hall with Tuoba Yen and Jiang Jiao. Little monster Tuoba didn't follow them, instead quietly sneaking out of the palace. Previously, she had heard Tuoba Yen say that there were still many experts from the Central Divine Continent in the city, How could she let go of this opportunity? In the nearby palace hall, Zhang Jiu glanced behind him. Your friend seems to have left the palace. Yi Xian smiled. Don't worry about her, even the myriad Dharma realm can't do anything to her. 8th on the demon level list. Let alone in the Azure province, even in the central divine continent, no one would dare to provoke such a figure. Moreover, little monster Tuoba's background was obviously not simple. He wouldn't believe that she didn't have any life-saving trump cards. The doors to the hall closed, leaving only the three of them seated around a table. Jiang Jiu and Tuoba Yen looked at Yi Xian, and Yi Xian said in a low voice, I want to form another Dao soldier, not an ordinary one, but a super one. I don't need too many people, just 10, but they must be the best. Not only must their individual strength be the best, but the equipment they use must be the best as well. Jiang Jiu said in a low voice, the best? You want to equip them with truth-grade equipment? Yi Xian nodded. Tuoba Yen and Jiang Jiu exchanged a glance when they heard this, and there was a trace of shock in their eyes. Truth-grade equipment. The two women fell silent. Yi Xian smiled bitterly. In truth, he knew that it was slightly insane. A piece of true-grade equipment was also priceless. After all, the sword box on his back cost nearly 3 billion gold coins. He still owed drunken Immortal over 20 million supreme-grade spirit stones. Although the things swordsmen used were more expensive, a piece of truth-grade equipment cost at least 15 million supreme-grade spirit stones. 15 million supreme-grade spirit stones. For the current situation, this was a very shocking number. Tuoba Yen glanced at Yi Xian and said in a low voice, if we want to equip them with truth-grade spirit weapons, even if my Ning country and the Jiang country join forces, it will be difficult. Moreover, even if we do manage to do it, we will probably have to use all the strength of our countries. With the current situation, if we use all the strength of our countries, the gains might not make up for the losses, and the two countries might even be forcefully dragged down. Jiang Jiu nodded. King Tuoba is right. Truth-grade equipment is truly too precious. Yi Xian suddenly said, how about this? I will be responsible for the money, and you two can be in charge. The two women looked at Yi Xian, and Jiang Jiu frowned slightly. Where are you going to get so much money? Yi Xian smiled. I have my ways. You two are responsible for choosing people for me. The Jiang country will choose 5 people, the Ning country will choose 5 people, and the Jiang country will choose 5 people. If there are more, that's fine too. Little Jiu, if you want to choose people, choose from the Dao soldiers, the elites of the Dao soldiers. Yen, you choose the same people. Choose the most outstanding people of your Ning country. After you choose, I will personally test them. Only when I nod my head will they be qualified. Saying this, he placed his hands on the table and softly said, I want the elites of the elites. Although the Blue Wave's Dao soldiers were not bad, it was still not enough. He needed a sharp knife that could pierce through everything. Especially in this chaotic era, he needed a super Dao soldier that could deal with anything. And this Dao soldier, he couldn't build it by himself. He needed the full support of the Ning country and the Jiang country, and also the intoxicated Immortal building. Even with the support of these 3 powers, he wasn't completely sure that he could build it. But, he wanted to take a gamble. Currently, even if he found 20 truth-grade swords, he still wouldn't be able to break through to 10,000 Laws realm. Because he had just reached Divine Unity realm, his realm was basically unstable. Even if he could, he didn't dare to break through to 10,000 Laws realm at this time, it was too impatient. Haste makes waste, he still understood the logic of haste. Now, the most important thing for him was to stabilize his realm, then break through to 10,000 Laws realm. And during this period, he just happened to be able to develop the Dao soldiers of Blue Wave's Academy and build a super Dao soldier. At this moment, Tuoba Yen suddenly looked at Yi Xian, are you serious? Yi Xian nodded, this Azure province can't fall into chaos. At least our Jiang country and Ning country can't fall into chaos, and in order to not fall into chaos, we need powerful strength. I alone am far from enough. Tuoba Yen suddenly took out a purple storage ring and placed it in front of Yi Xian. She didn't say anything. This is? Yi Xian asked. Tuoba Yen indifferently said, 30 million top-grade spirit stones. Hearing this, Yi Xian and Zhang Jiao were dumbfounded. 30 million top-grade spirit stones. Naturally, Yi Xian was somewhat shocked, because this was even more than what he obtained in Kuraki Academy. As if knowing what Yi Xian was thinking, Tuoba Yen explained, my Ning country's successive kings will save a private sum of wealth. This wealth will be accumulated from generation to generation, and this wealth can only be used at the Ning country's most critical moment. Yi Xian solemnly said, this is your Ning country's life-saving money. You give it to me. Tuoba Yen glanced at Yi Xian. If not for you, Ning country would have perished long ago. However, you have to promise me, as long as you are alive, Ning country will not perish. Yi Xian nodded, I promise you. Tuoba Yen nodded, no longer saying anything. At the side, Jiang Jiao suddenly said, I will also return to Jiang country and ask my imperial father to take out some top-grade spirit stones, but it may not be too much, the current Jiang country is in a bit of trouble. Yi Xian softly said, okay. Then now, you can go pick people. Leave the rest to me. 15 minutes later, Jiang Jiao and Tuoba Yen left the main hall. Pick people. For the two women, what they needed to do now was to pick people. It was not a simple matter to pick 5 people from each country. Yi Xian did not leave. He waited for almost an hour, and an old man suddenly appeared in the hall. 5th floor head. Yi Xian took out a storage ring and handed it to the 5th floor head. Everything in the storage ring will be exchanged for top-grade spirit stones. The 5th floor master glanced at the storage ring, and his expression changed. Because there was a heaven-rank martial skill, close to 10 earth-rank high-rank martial skills, 2 true-rank spirit artifacts, over 30 bright-rank spirit artifacts, over 80 supreme-rank spirit artifacts, and an assortment of other spirit artifacts. This was a shocking amount of wealth. Especially the heaven-grade martial skills and truth-grade spirit artifacts, they could be sold for an astronomical price. The 5th floor head did not say anything, and took the storage ring and left. After the 5th floor head left, Yi Xian entered the World Prison Pagoda and came to a corner. There, a sword was still trembling. A heaven-grade sword. After a moment of silence, Yi Xian said softly, follow me for a year, and I will return your freedom. I will keep my promise. The sword did not respond. Yi Xian turned around and left. Just when Yi Xian was about to reach the door, the heaven-grade sword suddenly trembled and let out a sword cry. Yi Xian stopped. Great Cloud Empire. A woman stood on the city wall with her hands hidden in her sleeves. 2 black phoenix claws were embroidered on her sleeves. This person was Great Cloud Empire's backer, King Lian Wanli. In front of Lian Wanli stood an elder. The elder wore a pink robe that had men and women drawn on it. These men and women were hugging each other and doing indescribable things. The old man looked at Lian Wanli with a trace of fear in his eyes, because he had just exchanged blows with the woman before him. He was defeated in a single move. The old man cupped his fists at Lian Wanli. Miss Lian, I have discussed with you about exterminating Yi Xian, Jiang country, and Ning country. What do you think about it? Exterminate Yi Xian. Lian Wanli blinked. What's there to think about? There's no need to think about it. I support your all-pleasure sect, a great deal. The old man was overjoyed. Really? Lian Wanli nodded seriously. Really, more real than real gold. P.S. After watching the live broadcast, I suddenly realized that I can also be a streamer. Isn't it just singing, wearing revealing clothes and shaking my butt a few times? If I become a star streamer, you guys will come to support me. I'm serious. Because being a streamer makes a lot of money, there are always tycoons who spend tens of thousands. Moreover, I think I can sing and dance. Chapter 214. Qingzhou. The spirit energy in Qingzhou was decreasing day by day. Many places had completely dried up and turned into barren lands. Many large and small cities in the Green Province had also become empty cities. Flee. All of them fled to places with spiritual qi, hoping to survive. Many cities were empty, but many of them were overcrowded and overcrowded. Moreover, more and more cultivators from the divine central continent had entered Qingzhou to plunder. Qingzhou was now in an extraordinarily chaotic state. Great Cloud Empire. Lian Wanli stood quietly on the city wall of the Great Cloud Empire. Behind her stood a woman in armor with a long sword at her waist. Lian Wanli was dressed in a dark red dress that dragged on the ground. Around the dress were pieces of fiery red scales. Phoenix scales. These scales were extremely lifelike and lifelike. Lian Wanli looked into the distance. At the end of her line of sight was an endless mountain range, from which many people were desperately rushing towards the imperial capital. Because the imperial capital of the Great Cloud Empire had spirit energy. The gates of the imperial capital of the Great Cloud Empire were not closed, so these people could enter and leave freely. After a long time, Lian Wanli withdrew her gaze. Ozwa, tell me about the situation. Ozwa lowered her head slightly. Your Majesty, 30% of the territory of the Great Cloud Empire has completely lost spirit energy, and the remaining 30% is dissipating at an extremely fast rate. In a month at most, the spirit energy will be completely gone. She paused for a moment before continuing. In addition to this natural disaster, there is also a man-made disaster. Turmoil has broken out everywhere. Coupled with the barbaric invasion and wanton plundering of experts from the divine central continent, Qingzhou is in chaos. Lian Wanli lowered her eyes. After a moment, she asked again, how are the Jiang Kingdom and the Ning Kingdom? Ozwa said solemnly, the situation is slightly better. Yi Xian won a complete victory in the Battle of the Ning Kingdom. Now, many experts from the divine central continent do not dare to provoke him lightly. Of course, that is except for the Joyful Union sect and the Joyful sect. These two forces are determined to win over the king of the Ning Kingdom, Tuoba Yen. An inner charm body? Lian Wanli asked. Ozwa shook her head. It's not that simple. That woman not only has an inner charm body, but her bloodline doesn't seem simple either. Bloodline. Lian Wanli looked at Ozwa. Do you know what bloodline is? Ozwa shook his head. I don't know yet. Lian Wanli was about to speak when suddenly, the sound of fighting came from below the city. She turned around and saw a group of people fighting below the city wall. After a moment of silence, Lian Wanli said softly, send out 100 black flame soldiers to patrol the city day and night. If there are any troublemakers, behead them immediately and hang their heads above the city gates. In addition, send 10 imperial guards to patrol the Great Cloud territory. If anyone dares to cause trouble, kill them on the spot. Ozwa was alarmed by Lian Wanli's words. The king's imperial guard was the most mysterious and strongest army in Great Cloud Empire. She was a member of the king's guards. However, she had never known of the existence of others, and the others had never known of her existence. Not only that, she did not know how many people there were in the king's imperial guards. In the entire Great Cloud Empire, Lian Wanli was the only one who knew about this mysterious army, which only obeyed his orders. Meanwhile, Lian Wanli suddenly said, prepare a cloud ship for this king. Ozwa was taken aback. Where is His Majesty going? Lian Wanli said with a smile, I promised Union sect to help them eliminate Yi Xian. This king is not a person who goes back on his word. Speaking of this, she seemed to have thought of something and a fox-like smile appeared on her lips. Ozwa lowered her head slightly. She knew that her king must be up to something bad again. Ning country. Outside the capital of the Ning Kingdom, Jiang Yi and 2 experts of the 10,000 Laws realm stood respectfully. In front of the 3 of them stood an old man. The old man wore a pink robe and exuded a pungent fragrance. This person was the vice sect master of Union sect. No one knew his name and only called him Old Man Union. Old Man Union glanced at Jiang Ye's shoulder. Is that Yi Xian really just a divine unity realm expert? Jiang Yi nodded, yes, but his battle strength is at least top 10 on the monster list. Top 10 on the monster list. Old Man Union's eyes narrowed slightly, and there was a trace of seriousness in them. Does he have any backing? Jiang Yi spoke solemnly. Supposedly, there is a sword immortal. A sword immortal. Old Man Union suddenly turned to look at Jiang Yi. Is that true? Jiang Yi hesitated for a moment and said, it should be true. Otherwise, it would be absolutely impossible for him to go against Kuraki Academy. However, I asked Kuraki Academy just now, and the dean said that the sword immortal was heavily injured by them and fled. Now, Kuraki Academy is pursuing her. Old Man Union instantly heaved a sigh of relief. That's good. When he spoke up to this point, he seemed to have thought of something and asked, then why hasn't Kuraki Academy eliminated Yi Xian? Jiang Yi thought for a moment and said, according to my inference, the firmament world has suffered a sudden upheaval, and the spirit energy in it has dried up. So, Kuraki Academy has no time to care about Pine Prefecture. Now, they only want to stabilize the situation in the Central Divine Prefecture, so they don't have the energy to care about Yi Xian. Old Man Union nodded. That makes sense. When he spoke up to this point, he raised his head and gazed at the nearby capital of the Kingdom of Peace, and there was a burning desire in his eyes. That woman doesn't just possess the inner charm physique, her bloodline is the Yin spirit bloodline that my joyful Union sect dreams of obtaining. That bloodline has to be suppressed with extremely overbearing aphrodisiacs since a young age. Since she was able to survive until now, there's definitely a huge amount of yang flames accumulated within her. If I'm able to dual cultivate with her and devour her bloodline. Old Man Union's hands trembled slightly when he spoke up to this point. However, he seemed to have thought of something and gradually calmed down once more. After a short moment of silence, Old Man Union spoke solemnly. The sect master has said that we must obtain this woman. He'll immediately rush over once he's finished dealing with the matters in the Central Divine Prefecture. If he obtains this woman, then the sect master will definitely rise to greater heights. At that time, my joyful Union sect status in the Devil Path will definitely rise greatly. Jiang Yi spoke solemnly, be careful of the Merry Gate. They haven't done anything lately, but they definitely won't miss such a rare opportunity. Old Man Union nodded. The sect master will need at least 2 days to arrive in Azure Province. We can't wait that long. Once Great Cloud Empire's King Reliance Wanli arrives, we'll immediately rush into the city, kill Yi Xian, and capture that woman alive. That sword immortal. Jiang Yi was somewhat apprehensive. Old Man Union spoke indifferently, it doesn't matter. Even if she escapes Kuraki Academy's pursuit, she won't dare appear in front of the sect master. She's just an injured sword immortal. The sect master can destroy her with a flick of his finger. Jiang Yi nodded, that's true. After saying that, his expression suddenly turned ferocious. If we capture the Yi Xian, please hand him over to me. This old man will make him wish he was dead. Old Man Union glanced at Jiang Yi. When the time comes, it's up to you. Ning Empire's imperial capital, World Prison Pagoda. Yi Xian sat cross-legged on the ground. A sword floated in front of him. The sword was 4 feet long and 2 fingers wide. The sword's entire body emitted a faint cold light. An unknown beast was drawn on the sword hilt. The beast's eyes were wide open and its expression was ferocious. Heaven-grade sword. A true heaven-grade treasure. Yi Xian held the sword hilt with his right hand. The sword trembled slightly but didn't resist. However, the spiritual energy in his body was depleting at an extremely fast speed. Moreover, the exquisite sword was trembling violently. This was a sign that it sensed danger. Sure enough, this sword wasn't something that the exquisite sword could contend against at the moment. It wasn't something that he could fully control at the moment. Yi Xian quickly let go of the sword. In this short period of time, the sword had already depleted 1/3 of the profound qi in his body. With his current strength, he could only use this sword 3 times at most. After 3 times, the spiritual energy in his body would definitely be depleted. As though he thought of something, Yi Xian quickly took out his sword case. Under his signal, the sword went straight into the sword case. The sword case trembled violently for a moment but quickly calmed down. About 15 minutes later, a smile appeared at the corner of Yi Xian's mouth because he realized that if he used this sword case, he could use the flying sword 5 times. 5 times. With his current strength, coupled with the true grade sword case and the heaven grade sword, as well as his own sword force and sword intent, there was a high chance that he could instantly kill a myriad Dharma realm practitioner. Of course, if the other party was fully on guard, it would be a little difficult. Of course, if one strike didn't work, he would use another. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly left the prison pagoda. In the main hall, Tuoba Yen walked in and walked up to Yi Xian. "They're here." Yi Xian nodded slightly. "Leave everything to me." With that, he walked out of the main hall. Behind him, Tuoba Yen stared at Yi Xian's back in a daze. After Yi Xian walked out of the main hall, there were 5 people standing in the sky in the distance. All 5 of them were at the myriad Dharma realm, and he knew 2 of them. They were Jiang Yi and Lian Wanli, whom he'd severed an arm earlier. Yi Xian's face instantly sank when he saw Lian Wanli. What does this crazy woman want? In the air, Old Man Concord glanced at Yi Xian and was about to attack when he suddenly looked to the right. "I wonder who's from the joyful sect." As soon as Old Man Concord finished speaking, 3 old men suddenly appeared on the right. All of them were at the myriad Dharma realm. Old Man Concord's gaze descended onto the gray-robed old man in the lead, and his eyes narrowed slightly. "Ku Xiaotian, I didn't expect you to come in person." Ku Xiaotian, the Grand Elder of the Joyful Sect, the second in command of the Joyful Sect. The old man called Ku Xiaotian grinned. "How could my Joyful Sect let go of such a seductive woman?" As he spoke, his gaze shifted to Tuoba Yen below, and there was a trace of excitement in his eyes. "She really is an inner seductive body. Even in the divine central continent, it's rare to see one. I didn't expect it to appear in this tiny azure province." Old Man Concord said indifferently, "My Joyful Sect wants this woman." Ku Xiaotian laughed. "My Joyful Sect will never let her go." Old Man Concord was about to speak when the sword box behind Yi Xian shook violently. Then, a sword soared into the sky. Buzz! A sword's cry tore through the sky, resounding through the clouds. In the air, Old Man Concord and Ku Xiaotian's expressions changed drastically, and they both retreated rapidly. Jiang Yi was just a little bit slower, and just that little bit caused his head to fly off. The entire place instantly fell silent. Below, Yi Xian opened his left hand, and the heaven-grade sword appeared in his hand. He took out a silk handkerchief with his right hand and gently wiped the blood off the sword. He shook his head as he wiped, "So the myriad Dharma realm is so weak. I only used 30% of my strength." As he spoke, he looked up at Old Man Concord and the others in the air. "Why did you stop? Come, let's continue the discussion. Everyone." Chapter 2:15. In the sky, Old Man Concord and the others wore grave expressions. The Dharma realm. Although Jiang Yi was injured, he was still in the Dharma realm. However, he was instantly killed by Yi Xian. That was an instant kill. And Yi Xian was only in the divine combination realm. At this moment, no one dared to look down on Yi Xian anymore. It would be foolish to look down on him at this moment. In the field, Lian Wanli's expression was calm. She merely glanced at the sword in Yi Xian's hand. A heaven-grade sword. Such a treasure was rare even in the Great Cloud Empire. She seemed to have thought of something and the corners of her mouth lifted slightly. No one knew what she was planning. At this moment, Old Man Concord and the others also noticed the sword in Yi Xian's hand. Their expressions instantly turned grave when they saw it. A heaven-grade sword. Such a treasure was very, very rare even in the central divine continent. For a swordsman to obtain such a treasure, especially a heaven-grade sword, it was like adding wings to a tiger. Old Man Hehuan glanced coldly at Yi Xian, then looked at Lien Wanli. Miss Lien, this person's strength is extraordinary. We need to join forces so that we can kill him in one strike and not give him any chances. What do you think? Lien Wanli nodded seriously. Okay, I support you. Old Man Concord smiled. That's good. Then, he looked at Ku Xiaotian on the right. Let's work together to get rid of Yi Xian first. As for the fate of the seductive woman, let's put it aside for now. What do you think? Ku Xiaotian glanced at Yi Xian and pondered for a moment before nodding. Okay. Old Man Concord looked at Yi Xian with a cold expression. Old man, let's see how monstrous you are. As soon as he finished speaking, he charged toward Yi Xian. Behind him, the 3 10,000 Laws Realm experts also rushed down. On the other side, Ku Xiaotian and the others also made their moves. 7 Dharma Realm experts. Such a lineup was undoubtedly extremely terrifying in the Qingzhou region. On the other hand, Yi Xian was only at the Divine Combination realm. Yi Xian's face was expressionless as he lightly tapped the sword in his hand against his palm. When Old Man Concord was several feet above his head, he suddenly raised his sword and slashed upwards. Boom! Along with the sound of an explosion, Old Man Concord was instantly forced back several dozen feet, while Yi Xian was forced back more than 500 feet. With this retreat, he had already retreated into the main hall. However, Ku Xiaotian and the others had already arrived. Boom! An explosion sounded like a clap of thunder. In an instant, the hall that Yi Xian was in collapsed. And in the instant that it collapsed, Yi Xian retreated explosively. But Old Man Concord and the others were even faster, arriving in front of him in an instant. At this time, 8 figures suddenly rushed over from the side, their speed extremely fast. Boom 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 boom, along with the deafening sound of explosions, Old Man Concord and the others had already retreated hundreds of feet away. At this moment, there were 8 people standing in front of Yi Xian. These people were incomparably familiar to Yi Xian. The previous ruler of Jiang country, Jiang Yuetian, Feng Lan, Mo Yuan, the 6th, 7th, and 8th floor masters of Drunken Immortal Inn, as well as the 2 Dharma realm experts who had been guarding Tuoba Yen. 8 Dharma realm experts. Seeing Jiang Yuetian and the others, Old Man Concord's expression instantly turned gloomy. Who are you? Why are you interfering in the matters of my Joyous Union sect and Joyous Gate? Jiang Yuetian said indifferently, we will advance and retreat together with little friend Yi Xian. With one sentence, he made his stand clear. Given the current situation in Qingzhou, for Jiang Yuetian and Drunken Immortal Inn, everyone naturally had to stick together. As for Feng Lan and Mo Yuan, they had already placed their hopes on Yi Xian. Naturally, they didn't want anything to happen to Yi Xian. Moreover, they were now members of Blue Wave's Academy. If they didn't take action now, how could they establish themselves in Blue Wave's Academy in the future? Thus, after receiving Yi Xian's sound transmission, they immediately rushed over. Yi Xian walked in front of Old Man Concord and the others. Everyone, I, Yi Xian, have no enmity with any of you. I don't want to form a life or death enmity with any of you. Now, if you leave, everything will be fine. How about that? Old Man Concord sneered. Sure. But before that, you have to hand over that seductive woman, otherwise. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly turned to Jiang Yuetian and the others. Kill, leave no one alive. As soon as he finished speaking, he had already rushed in front of Old Man Concord with his sword in hand. Without any superfluous words, he slashed down with his sword. One sword to decide life and death. This sword strike was a strike with all of his strength. Sword force, sword intent, and one sword to decide life and death. Especially now that the sword was a heaven-rank sword, this sword could be said to be the strongest sword he had ever used. Sensing the power of Yi Xian's sword, Old Man Concord's complexion changed greatly. He suddenly pulled his hands to both sides and a pink shield suddenly appeared in front of him. At the same time, a powerful force and aura burst out of his body. Bang! As Yi Xian's sword fell, the pink shield in front of Old Man Concord exploded with a loud bang. The power and aura released by Old Man Concord were also shattered by the sword in an instant. The powerful force instantly sent Old Man Concord flying hundreds of feet away. Just as Old Man Concord stopped, the ground under his feet instantly cracked. Not only that, the powerful force unceasingly fluctuated in all directions through his feet. In an instant, the ground within a radius of 300 meters around him cracked layer by layer. At the same time that Yi Xian forced Old Man Concord back with his sword, he also retreated more than 60 meters. The rest of the people had already started fighting with Jiang Yuetian and the others. However, there was one person who did not make a move. Lian Wanli. From the beginning until the end, she did not make a move. She just stood there and chatted with someone. Little Demon Tuoba. The two women were chatting passionately. Old Man Concord wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. At this moment, his internal organs were injured. Not only that, but his arms had also split open. The gashes were so large that his bones could be seen. Old Man Concord turned to look at Lian Wanli, who was chatting passionately nearby. His face was extremely gloomy. "Miss Lian, why didn't you make a move?" Hearing Old Man Concord's words, Lian Wanli turned to look at him in shock. "Why should I make a move?" Old Man Concord clenched his fists. "Miss Lian, you promised the old man that you would support him with all your strength." Lian Wanli nodded. "That's right. However, I didn't say that I would help you." Then, she said very seriously, "I did say that I would support you with all my strength, but I only supported you in spirit." "I supported you in spirit." Pfft. Old Man Concord was so angry that he spat out a mouthful of blood. He stared resentfully at Lian Wanli. He knew that he had been played by this woman. However, he could not figure out why this woman would play a trick on him. After all, if he destroyed Yi Xian and got rid of the Ning Kingdom and the Jiang Kingdom, then the Great Cloud Empire would truly become the strongest power in Qingzhou. Moreover, the Great Cloud Empire would become the Concord sect's ally. He really could not figure out why Lian Wanli would do this. In fact, he did not know that Lian Wanli favored Yi Xian more. Because the powers of the divine central continent wanted to plunder and destroy Qingzhou, and just like her, Yi Xian wanted to protect this place. Allying with the Concord sect was undoubtedly like asking a tiger for its skin. Old Man Concord wanted to say something, but at this moment, Yi Xian had already rushed in front of him with a sword in hand and slashed down again. This sword strike was stronger than the previous one. Old Man Concord's expression changed drastically. Without thinking, he turned around and fled. He was so fast that he disappeared from Yi Xian's sight in the blink of an eye. Seeing Old Man Concord flee, Yi Xian was stunned. Ran away? Just like that? On the other side, Ku Xiaotian and the others did not hesitate to turn around and flee after seeing Old Man Concord flee. They were all experts of the Dharma realm. If they wanted to flee, Jiang Yuetian and the others could do nothing to them. They could only watch helplessly as Ku Xiaotian and the others fled. Yi Xian could not continue to attack. He had just launched 3 sword strikes, and his current combat strength was less than 20%. Although he had won, Yi Xian's expression was still solemn. Because he knew that the Concord sect and the Laughing sect would definitely make a comeback, and they might even bring other forces and more experts with them. And the next time they came, it would definitely be a fierce battle. They could not passively take a beating. If this continued, the other party would always have the upper hand. If they could win, they would fight, if they couldn't, they would run. They would be exhausted to death. After a moment of silence, Yi Xian turned around to face Lian Wanli. Lian Wanli's lips curled into a charming smile. Congratulations on reaching the Divine Union realm. Yi Xian asked, together? Lian Wanli's smile widened. All right. Yi Xian nodded. Follow me, let's discuss this in detail. After saying that, he turned around and walked towards the hall not far away. On the other hand, Lian Wanli held little demon Tuoba's little hand and followed them. Along the way, the two girls chatted non-stop. Watching Yi Xian and the others leave, Jiang Yuetian shook his head and smiled. Little friend Yi Xian's strength has really improved by leaps and bounds. This kind of cultivation speed is really embarrassing. Feng Lan and Mo Yuan looked at each other with a trace of a smile in their eyes. The more outstanding Yi Xian was, the better it was for them. As if thinking of something, Feng Lan suddenly said, Brother Mo, please make a trip to the Learning Cliff ruins and collect some talent. It's time to upgrade the 12 golden men. Mo Yuan hesitated for a moment before nodding, all right. Soon, the two turned around and left. On the other side, the sixth-floor master glanced in the direction that Old Man Concord and the others had escaped to. These people will definitely come back. From now on, send out all the scouts of my drunken immortal house to keep track of their whereabouts. The seventh-floor master nodded slightly. I'll handle it personally. Soon, the crowd dispersed. Thousands of miles away from the Ning country's imperial city, Old Man Concord and the others stopped. Seeing that Yi Xian and the others did not chase after them, they immediately heaved a sigh of relief. Old Man Concord's face was terrifyingly gloomy. I never thought that Yi Xian would be so monstrous. Not far away, Ku Xiaotian said in a low voice, this person's strength is too monstrous. It's difficult for us to eliminate him. Old Man Concord was silent for a moment. Call for reinforcements. Ku Xiaotian looked at Old Man Concord. Old Man Concord said coldly, the divine central continent has no lack of monstrous geniuses. Ku Xiaotian shook his head. It's difficult to invite the top 10 monstrous geniuses of the monstrous ranking. Old Man Concord said indifferently, have you heard of the Northern Chill Saintess? Ku Xiaotian Tendo said, of course, this person is the youngest monstrous genius of the divine central continent. Why, can your joyful union sect invite her? Old Man Concord said in a low voice, the Northern Chill sect owes the previous sect master of my joyful union sect a favor. If my joyful union sect uses this favor to invite her, it shouldn't be too much of a problem. At this point, his expression was somewhat ferocious. I don't believe that Yi Xian is more monstrous than the Northern Chill Saintess. P.S. Recently, I've been dreaming that I've written books for tens of millions of people, everyone. If I continue to struggle, do you think I'll become famous one day? To be honest, I'm a little uncertain, and a little panicked. Chapter 216. In the hall. There were only two people in the hall, Yi Xian and Lian Wanli. Lian Wanli picked up the teacup in front of her and took a sip. After a while, she shook her head, it's bitter and bitter. It's an inferior tea. With that, she put down the teacup. Yi Xian smiled, Miss Lian, I feel very close to you this time. What's that saying again? Oh, right, a day apart feels like 3 autumns. Lian Wanli sized up Yi Xian, I haven't seen you in a few days, and besides your strength, your eloquence has also improved. Yi Xian wanted to say something, but Lian Wanli said indifferently, let's get straight to the point. Yi Xian nodded and said seriously, tell me what you think. Lian Wanli dipped his finger into the tea, then drew a circle on the table. Because of your master, the entire firmament world has undergone a huge change, especially our Azure province. Our source has been greatly damaged, and the spirit chi in the various places is disappearing at an extremely fast speed. At this point, she pointed to many small dots on the circle. Besides that, there's one more thing. After entering Azure Prefecture, those people from the divine central continent have committed all sorts of crimes and plundered madly. These people are individually strong, and they're scattered, so it's difficult to completely eradicate them. If we want to save Azure Prefecture, we have to start from two sides. First, find the spirit vein and restore Azure Prefecture's origin. Second, pacify the people and eliminate the enemy. Yi Xian was slightly surprised because he hadn't expected Lian Wanli to want to save the entire Azure Prefecture. As if she knew what Yi Xian was thinking, Lian Wanli said indifferently, "The greater the ability, the greater the responsibility. In Azure Prefecture, besides my great cloud empire, the strongest person is you, Yi Xian. You have the state of Jiang, the state of Ning, and the drunken Immortal Pavilion behind you. If we don't do anything, Azure Prefecture will become hell on earth in a month at most." Hell on earth. Yi Xian was silent, and his face was slightly gloomy because Lian Wanli was right. If he hadn't come to the Ning Kingdom would have become a living hell. If those experts from the divine central continent entered the city, they would surely unleash the darkest side of their hearts. Human nature. In this chaotic world, many people had lost their humanity. Lian Wanli looked at Yi Xian, waiting for Yi Xian's reply. Her right hand was gripping the teacup tightly. At this time, Yi Xian suddenly shook his head. There was a trace of disappointment in Lian Wanli's eyes when she saw Yi Xian shake his head. She let go of the teacup and was about to leave. However, Yi Xian suddenly said, "I think that just relying on me and the Great Cloud Empire isn't enough. We need to unite all the people in Qing province, such as the state of Yu, the state of Chu, and the other countries, as well as the rogue cultivators. Everyone must join hands and work together. Only then can we restore peace to Qing province." He, Yi Xian, had never thought of saving the world. All along, he had only wanted to protect the people around him. But now, he was very clearly aware that if he only thought about protecting himself, then it wouldn't just be selfish, it would be foolish as well. Because if he didn't help others while it was still within his ability, then he would realize one day that no one would help him after everyone else had died. When he thought up to here, a strand of sword intent suddenly surged out from within Yi Xian. Kindness sword intent. Yi Xian was stunned. Because he hadn't released it on his own, but it had come out of him on its own. More and more sword intent filled the hall, and it didn't take long for the entire hall to be covered by it. The sword intent was like a white mist that could be clearly sensed. It was material. Lian Wanli took a deep glance at Yi Xian. If this continues, then Yi Xian will attain the Sword Emperor realm. It didn't take long for the sword intent to drift out of the hall. But right at this moment, Lian Wanli waved her right hand. This chapter isn't finished. Please continue to the next page. Bang! The sword intent that had just spread out of the hall instantly dispersed. It wasn't just the sword intent outside the hall that had dispersed, even the sword intent within the hall had been completely swept away. Yi Xian looked at Lian Wanli, and the latter said indifferently, "You aren't the Sword Emperor, yet your sword intent is material. I presume it's because of your sword Dao. It's best not to reveal too many of your trump cards before you possess absolute strength." Yi Xian nodded, "I understand." As he spoke, he opened up his palm, and there was a ball of sword intent within it. At this moment, he noticed that the greater his kindness intent was, the stronger this kindness sword intent would be. Now, this kindness sword intent was at least 20% stronger than before. Actually, he was really curious about the malicious intent sword intent now. Because the mysterious woman had told him that the might of the malicious intent sword intent was even stronger. Meanwhile, Lian Wanli suddenly asked in a light voice. "You said that you'd unite everyone in the Azure Prefecture?" Yi Xian withdrew his sword intent and nodded. "Don't underestimate these people. Perhaps they aren't particularly strong, but if they unite, they'll still be a force to be reckoned with. Moreover, if we don't unite them, it's very likely that they'll join the experts of the divine central continent in stirring up trouble. At that time, the situation will become even more difficult to deal with." Lian Wanli nodded slightly. "That makes sense." As she spoke, she looked at Yi Xian. I've already sent people to search for spirit veins and find out where the quintessence of the Azure Prefecture is. As long as we have enough spirit veins, we can repair the quintessence of the Azure Prefecture. Yi Xian said in a low voice, roughly how many spirit veins do we need? Lian Wanli looked directly at Yi Xian. At least 100 supreme-grade spirit veins. Yi Xian was stunned. 100 supreme-grade spirit veins? He only had one right now. And this one was an extremely rare existence in the entire Azure Prefecture. 100. Where could he get them? Lian Wanli suddenly laughed. I was just kidding. Yi Xian, Lian Wanli suddenly took out a storage ring and placed it on the table. This thing is for you. With that, she turned and left. After Lian Wanli left, Yi Xian picked up the storage ring. When he saw what was inside, he was stunned. A true rank sword. A total of 3 swords. Yi Xian took the storage ring and walked out of the hall. At this moment, Lian Wanli had already vanished. This woman was actually this generous? Yi Xian was slightly puzzled. At this moment, an old man suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian. The 5th floor master. The 5th floor master pointed with a finger, and a storage ring appeared in front of Yi Xian. Young friend, I've sold all the items you entrusted me with. They're all in this storage ring. There's a total of 650 million supreme-grade spirit stones. 650 million supreme-grade spirit stones. Yi Xian's hand couldn't help but tremble. The 5th floor master smiled. Don't underestimate a heaven-rank martial technique. This kind of thing is very rare even in the divine central continent. Yi Xian nodded. He took out a storage ring and handed it to the 5th floor master. These are the supreme-grade spirit stones I owe the drunken immortal restaurant. The 5th floor master did not refuse. He immediately put away the storage ring. As if thinking of something, his expression darkened. Young friend, according to the information the old man received, Blue Billow Continent is in chaos. In a month at most, Blue Billow Continent may become a dead continent. When that time comes, the experts of the Divine Central Continent will most likely come to Azure Continent. Not only that, but the Divine Central Continent itself has also begun to fall into chaos. Many people who can't survive there will most likely come to Azure Continent. And the Realm Defense Alliance should have already abandoned Azure Continent and Blue Billow Continent. At this point, he looked at Yi Xian. Young friend, if you can't let go of the Jiang Nation, the Ning Nation, and Blue Billow Academy, please make plans early. Yi Xian said solemnly. This chapter is not finished. Please continue. How did Blue Billow Continent become like this? The 5th floor master smiled bitterly. Not only did the most powerful forces there not protect Blue Billow Continent, but they also took the initiative to plunder local resources. Compared to the people of the Divine Central Continent, they are even worse. Especially Blue Billow Academy, they are the richest. After plundering the resources, Blue Billow Academy immediately brought their elite disciples back to the Divine Central Continent. At this point, he glanced at Yi Xian. If young friend and the Great Cloud Empire are in the same situation, I believe that Azure Continent will become a dead continent in half a month at most. Clearly, he was testing Yi Xian. Yi Xian smiled. Don't worry, senior. Although I, Yi Xian, am greedy at times, I still have a bottom line. The 5th floor master nodded slightly. The old man knows young friend's character. At this time, Yi Xian handed the storage ring given to him by the 5th floor master. Senior, this storage ring contains 500 million supreme-grade spiritual stones. I would like to ask Senior to purchase a batch of truth-grade spiritual weapons, armors, and weapons. In short, as long as it is suitable, I will accept it. The 5th floor master glanced at Yi Xian and did not ask any questions. After putting away the storage ring, he nodded. The old man will look for young friend in 5 days. With that, he turned and left. After the fifth floor master left, Yi Xian returned to the main hall and entered the prison pagoda. He took out the 3 swords given to him by Lian Wanli and devoured them without hesitation. It was not to break through to the next realm, but to stabilize it. After reaching the Divine Unity realm, he found that he still had some shortcomings in the battle with the Dharma realm. The most obvious one was that his realm was a little unstable and he could not use his sword skills with ease. His strength in all aspects had increased too much compared to when he was at the Nether Passage realm, and he did not have the time to adapt to it. Thus, he had not been able to fully display his battle strength when he fought Old Man Concord. Otherwise, he could have killed Old Man Concord directly. What he needed to do now was to stabilize his realm and adapt to the Divine Unity realm. The Divine Central Continent. After Old Man Concord returned to the Divine Central Continent, the entire Joyful Union sect was shocked. Because no one in the Joyful Union sect had expected that Old Man Concord would be heavily injured by Yi Xian. In the end, the Joyful Union sect decided to ask for help because the sect master of the Joyful Union sect could not leave the Divine Central Continent for now. If the Joyful Union sect did not have an expert to stand guard, it was very likely that it would be wiped out in one fell swoop. After all, the Divine Central Continent was in quite a mess right now. Thus, after Old Man Concord recovered from his injuries, he immediately represented the Joyful Union sect and headed to the Frost North sect. The Frost North sect was a first-rate power in the Divine Central Continent. Coupled with its unique geographical location, most powers in the Divine Central Continent would not easily provoke the Frost North sect. Especially now that the Frost North sect had produced a Frost North Holy Maiden, the Frost North sect's prestige in the Divine Central Continent had risen greatly. The Frost North Holy Maiden. She was the most monstrous genius in the Divine Central Continent, and she was now ranked 5th on the genius ranking. This time, Old Man Concord's goal in coming to the Frost North sect was precisely this Frost North Holy Maiden. To ask for the help of the entire Frost North sect for a favor was obviously a fool's dream, but if he only asked for one person's help, then it would not be a problem at all. Old Man Concord stood silently in the Frost North Palace. The air around him was so cold that even he felt a little cold. After an unknown period of time, a beautiful woman appeared not too far away from Old Man Concord. Old Man Concord hurriedly bowed slightly, then took out a jade pendant and handed it to the beautiful woman. The beautiful woman took the jade pendant and glanced at it. After a while, she looked at Old Man Concord. "What is it?" Old Man Concord bowed slightly again. "I would like to ask the Frost North Holy Maiden to help my Joyful Union sect kill someone in Azure Province." End of this chapter. Chapter 217. Azure Prefecture. The beautiful woman's beautiful brows knit together slightly. That barbaric land? Old Man Concord nodded slightly. Exactly. The beautiful woman spoke indifferently. "According to what I heard, your Joyful Union sect dispatched a large number of disciples to Azure Prefecture. I presume that your Joyful Union sect's gains were great." Old Man Concord smiled bitterly. What could a barbaric land like Azure Prefecture have? My Joyful Union sect is heading to Azure Prefecture to gather some talents and bring them back to the Central Divine Prefecture to be fostered. That's all. The beautiful woman naturally didn't believe Old Man Concord's nonsense. However, she couldn't be bothered to deal with such trivial matters, so she immediately said, "My Frost North sect naturally recognizes the favor we owe you. However, if you want to invite the Saintess, that will depend on her own opinion, to Azure Prefecture." Meanwhile, an icy cold voice suddenly resounded from the side. Old Man Concord turned around. A young girl around the age of 13 or 14 had suddenly appeared not too far away from him. The young girl wore an icy dress, and her entire body emanated bone-piercing coldness. The Frost North Saintess. Old Man Concord bowed slightly. "Greetings, Saintess." Not only was this young girl an extremely monstrous genius, she was also the Frost North Saintess, and the Frost North Saintess was the next sect master of the Frost North sect. Moreover, the status of the Frost North sect in the Devil Path was much higher than that of the Joyful Union sect. The young girl walked over to Old Man Concord. To Azure Prefecture? Old Man Concord hurriedly nodded. Yes. Azure Prefecture. The young girl's hand that was hidden in her sleeve trembled. She lowered her head slightly so that no one could see her expression. Old Man Concord thought that the young girl didn't want to go, so he hurriedly withdrew a spatial ring and passed it to the young girl. This is a small gift that my Joyful Union sect has prepared for Your Highness the Saintess. I hope that Your Highness the Saintess will accept it. The young girl received the spatial ring and saw that there were 50 million top-grade spirit stones within it. 50 million. I can buy Big Brother a mid-grade truth rank sword with that. A slight smile arose on the corners of the young girl's mouth. She put the spatial ring away, and then she looked at Old Man Concord. I'll go with you. Old Man Huan was overjoyed. With the addition of the Northern Chill Saintess, killing Yi Xian wouldn't be difficult at all. As long as they killed Yi Xian, the Acacia sect would be able to obtain the Inner Charm Woman. And as long as they obtained the Inner Charm Woman, the strength of the Acacia sect master would increase greatly. At that time, the status of the Acacia sect in the Devil Path would be greatly improved. Moreover, with the addition of the Northern Chill Holy Maiden, it meant that the Huan sect had the backing of the Frigid North sect. Killing two birds with one stone. Just like that, Old Man Huan left with the Northern Chill Holy Girl. Other than the Northern Chill Holy Lady, the Northern Chill sect had also sent 2 10,000 Dharma realms and 1 Dharma defensive realm to follow them. It could be said that the Northern Chill Holy Lady was the future of the Northern Chill clan. They would not let anything happen to her. On the cloud ship, the little girl exuding a cold aura stared ahead. She seemed to be in a daze. In her right hand, she held a small wooden figurine that had already become an ice sculpture. He was eager to return home. Under the little girl's signal, the cloud ship sped up. Ning Country. In the World Prison Pagoda, after an unknown period of time, Yi Xian suddenly took a deep breath. A formless aura rippled around his body, but it quickly disappeared. Comfortable. That was what he was feeling now. His entire body felt extremely comfortable. As if he had thought of something, he suddenly opened his palm. A ray of sword light flashed past, and the Spirit Elegant Sword appeared in his hand. At that moment, the Spirit Elegant Sword had been upgraded from True Grade Middle Grade to True Grade High Grade. Now, it could be said that the Spirit Elegant Sword had reached the bottleneck of the Spirit Elegant Sword. If it wanted to upgrade again, it would be as difficult as ascending to the heavens. Because now, not only did he have to devour the sword, he also needed the Spirit Elegant Sword to transform. If it could not transform, it would be useless no matter how many true grade swords it devoured. As if he had thought of something, he suddenly, this chapter is not over. Please continue to the next page. He took out the sword case. Inside the sword case was the Heaven Grade Sword. It had to be said that there was still a huge gap between the current Spirit Elegant Sword and this Heaven Grade Sword. If he devoured this Heaven Grade Sword now, not only would he be devoured, the Spirit Elegant Sword would definitely be devoured as well. Unfortunately, this Heaven Grade Sword did not have a high degree of integration with him. Although he was able to activate the sword now, he had not fully unleashed the true power of the sword. Otherwise, with his current strength and a heaven rank sword, it would be a piece of cake for him to kill a 10,000 laws realm cultivator. He had thought of subduing this sword, but this sword was very arrogant and did not pay any attention to him. Even though it was arrogant, this sword was very trustworthy. After it left the prison pagoda, it could have escaped, but it did not choose to escape. Instead, it chose to stay. The Heaven Grade Sword actually had its own consciousness, and it might even be able to come into contact with some so-called Tao. In any case, to him, it was definitely a good thing that this sword did not run away. As for whether he could finally subdue this sword, he did not insist on it. If he could, it would be his fortune. If he couldn't, it would be his fate. A moment later, Yi Xian put away the sword case and sword, and left the prison pagoda. As soon as he left the prison pagoda, the great hall's door suddenly opened, and Jiang Jiao hurriedly ran in. She ran in front of Yi Xian and looked straight at Yi Xian. Something has happened in the Jiang country. Yi Xian frowned. What happened? Jiang Jiao said fiercely, some mysterious people have charged into the Jiang country's hinterland. Wherever they passed, no one was left alive. Two World City has already been slaughtered. At this point, Jiang Jiao slowly clenched her fists, and her eyes were cold. Slaughtered. Yi Xian said in a low voice, come, let's go take a look. Before long, the two of them left the Ning country on a cloud ship. The Ning country was not far from the Jiang country. In less than an hour, the two of them arrived at Two World City. As soon as Yi Xian and Jiang Jiao walked to the city gate, a monstrous smell of blood assaulted their nostrils, causing them to vomit. Yi Xian's face sank, and he led Jiang Jiao into the city. The ground beneath their feet was covered in blood, and it flowed out incessantly like a small stream. The two of them walked along the street, and corpses could be seen everywhere in the city. There were corpses of the elderly and children, and all of them had a single similarity. All of them had a bloody hole in their chests. Jiang Jiao walked over to one of the corpses and inspected it, and then she turned around to look at Yi Xian. Their hearts are gone. Yi Xian fell silent for a moment before he said, let's go and see if there are any survivors. As soon as he finished speaking, the two of them continued forward. The further they went, the more shocked they became. Because there were truly too many corpses. The streets on both sides were covered in corpses, and it was a horrifying sight. Jiang Jiao was once the marshal of the Jiang country, and she'd killed many. However, she'd never slaughtered a city like this. Yet now, someone had actually slaughtered a city, and they didn't even spare the elderly, women, and children. Jiang Jiao gripped her spear tightly in her right hand, and her expression was rather savage. These were the citizens of the Jiang country. It didn't take long for the two of them to arrive at the city governor's estate. At this moment, it was deathly silent within the estate. Corpses were piled up everywhere, and the air was filled with an extremely dense smell of blood. At the entrance of the estate, Yi Xian stopped and shook his head. There are no survivors. Wait. As he spoke, he suddenly turned around. A man in blood-red clothes was standing over 30 m away from him, and in his right hand was a little girl around the age of 10. The little girl's face was filled with terror, and her tiny hands were clinging tightly to the man's hand as she cried and begged incessantly. The man in blood-red clothes stared fixedly at Yi Xian. The blood sect is handling matters. Unrelated people should get lost. The blood sect. Jiang Jiao stared at the man in blood-red clothes, and her right hand gripped her spear tightly, causing it to tremble. Yi Xian slowly walked towards the man in blood-red clothes, and when the little girl saw Yi Xian, it was as if she had seen her savior. She stretched out her tiny hands towards Yi Xian, and pleaded, brother, save her. This chapter is not over, please continue to the next page. I'm afraid. Yi Xian took out a golden card. Friend, there are 1,000,000 supreme grade spirit stones in this card. How about exchanging it for this little girl's life? 1,000,000 supreme grade spirit stones. In this era where spiritual energy was thin, 1,000,000 supreme grade spirit stones could be said to be a considerable amount of wealth. The man in blood-red clothes glanced at the golden card in Yi Xian's hand, and then looked at Yi Xian with narrowed eyes. 1,000,000 supreme grade spirit stones for the life of this lowly ant? Yi Xian said softly, you're not losing out, are you? The man in blood-red clothes stared straight at Yi Xian. Give me a reason. Yi Xian fell silent. In his body, the spirit elegant sword was already trembling violently, and it could come out at any time. However, he didn't dare to make a move now, because the man in blood-red clothes' right hand was clasping the back of the little girl's neck. Moreover, the man in blood-red clothes wasn't weak, and he was at least at the peak of the divine union realm. Moreover, from his aura, he wasn't an ordinary peak of the divine union realm. If he made a move, he was confident that he could kill the man in blood-red clothes, but he wasn't confident that he could save the little girl before he killed the man in blood-red clothes. The man in blood-red clothes sized up Yi Xian, and sneered. Your aura isn't weak, so I guess you're not an ordinary person. Of course, this has nothing to do with me. I just want to know why you're willing to spend 1,000,000 supreme-grade spirit stones to save a worthless lowly ant. Yi Xian said solemnly, you take the supreme-grade spirit stones, and I take the girl. Isn't that good? The man in blood-red clothes grinned. I just want to know the reason, can't I? Yi Xian pondered for a moment, and said softly, there's no reason, I'm just compassionate. That's all. Compassionate? The man in blood-red clothes grinned. Sure. However, 1,000,000 supreme-grade spirit stones is too little. I want 5,000,000 supreme-grade spirit stones. 5,000,000 supreme-grade spirit stones. Jiang Jiu, who was beside Yi Xian, stared at the man in blood-red clothes, and the murderous intent in his eyes was almost tangible. Yi Xian remained silent, and he didn't say a word. At this moment, the man in blood-red clothes grinned. Not giving? As soon as he said that, he exerted some force in his right hand. In an instant, the little girl's eyes widened, and her face turned pale. She opened her mouth, and a hoarse sound came from her mouth, and she was in extreme pain. Seeing this, Jiang Jiu was so angry that his entire body was trembling. Yi Xian suddenly flicked his finger, and a golden card flew to the man in blood-red clothes. The man caught the card, and there were exactly 5,000,000 supreme-grade spirit stones in it. The man in blood-red clothes kept the card, and then he exerted some force with his right hand. Kacha! The little girl's neck was instantly broken. The man in blood-red clothes threw the little girl's corpse in front of Yi Xian, and looked at Yi Xian. He grinned, I didn't say that I would give her to you alive or dead. What do you think? Yi Xian's hands were trembling violently, and after a moment of silence, he said softly, why? The man in blood-red clothes was about to speak, and at this moment, a pure white sword intent suddenly swept out from Yi Xian's body. Good thought, sword intent. Yi Xian walked towards the man in blood-red clothes, and he clenched his fists, and his expression was unprecedentedly ferocious. So, a person can be so evil. Good people should be treated with kindness, and evil people should be tortured to death. Let them suffer the cruelest punishment in the world. As soon as he said that, boom! The pure white sword intent around Yi Xian instantly turned pitch black. Evil thought. Good and evil sword intent. At the same time, above the prison pagoda, the sword in the middle suddenly trembled. P.S. Please vote for me on account of my handsomeness. Otherwise, what use do I have for my peerless looks? End of this chapter. Chapter 218. How evil could human nature be? Before this, Yi Xian had seen numerous evil people. Some evil people weren't really evil. Most of the time, they just had different standpoints. For example, fights frequently broke out between clans because of their interests and survival. He understood such things. At this moment, he had a new understanding of evil. Many people in this world weren't fit to be called people. When they did evil, they could be said to be inhumane. Just like this person before him. Human nature was extremely kind, but it was actually extremely evil as well. When he saw the seemingly material sword intent that emanated from Yi Xian, the man's expression changed drastically, and there was a trace of terror in his eyes. Material sword intent, you, at this moment, a strand of dark sword light suddenly pierced through the man's left shoulder, and his voice stopped abruptly. At the same time, the powerful force within the strand of dark sword light shook the man to the ground and pushed him back repeatedly. In the end, it nailed him to a wall. The man was just about to struggle free from the strand of sword light, but another 3 strands of black sword light shot over and nailed his feet and right shoulder respectively. The man couldn't move anymore. The man stared fixedly at Yi Xian. At this moment, his eyes were filled with terror because the 4 strands of sword light were corroding him. Moreover, he hadn't been able to fight back since the beginning. Yi Xian didn't attack again. He walked over to the little girl's corpse. At this moment, the little girl's eyes were still wide open, and they were still filled with terror. She was only a child. Yi Xian brushed his right hand past the little girl's eyes. Meanwhile, the man suddenly said, "Your Excellency, I'm the grandson of the Blood Sect's Vice-Sect Master. Your Excellency, don't bring trouble to yourself and your loved ones." Yi Xian suddenly charged over to the man, and a sword appeared in his hand. It was the Spirit Elegant sword, but at this moment, it was actually dark black. Dark black. Obviously, the Spirit Elegant sword had been affected by the sword intent of evil thoughts. However, Yi Xian didn't realize that the aura of the Spirit Elegant sword was several times stronger than before. It could be said to be close to a heaven-grade sword. Yi Xian grabbed the man's throat with a ferocious expression. "Come, have a taste of being abused." As soon as he finished speaking, he waved the exquisite sword in his hand. In an instant, the flesh on the man's body began to fly off piece by piece. Death by 1,000 cuts. Ah! At first, the man in the blood-red garments was able to endure it for a while. However, gradually, he couldn't endure it any longer, and began to madly shout, "You lowly ant from the Qing province! How dare you treat me like this? My blood sect will definitely wipe out your entire sect. I will exterminate your entire family." Yi Xian ignored him and swung his sword even faster. At this moment, the aura that Yi Xian exuded was extremely evil, extremely evil. Punish evil with evil. The man in blood-red clothes roared and howled hysterically. His hands had already been shaved by Yi Xian until only the bones were left, and now, Yi Xian was going for his feet. Tragic. Extremely tragic, simply too tragic to look at. However, the rage in Yi Xian's heart was still difficult to quell. A sliver of deep worry appeared in Zhang Jiu's eyes as she looked at the current Yi Xian. This was because the current Yi Xian was completely different from before. The sword intent and aura that exuded from his body made her feel extremely uncomfortable. The current Yi Xian made her feel slightly afraid. Stop! Right at this moment, a furious roar suddenly sounded out from the end of the street. Before the voice could finish, an extremely powerful aura suddenly enveloped Yi Xian. Before Yi Xian could make a move, the evil will sword intent around his body suddenly vibrated. Bang! The aura was instantly dispersed. Meanwhile, Yi Xian and Zhang Jiu, this chapter is not over, please continue to the next page. A black-clothed old man stood not far away. The old man's right hand held a piece of pitch-black cloth. The old man stared fixedly at Yi Xian, his eyes incomparably gloomy. "Who are you? Why did you attack a disciple of my blood sect?" Jiang Jiu suddenly stood out from beside Yi Xian and said angrily, "This is the territory of my Jiang country, yet your blood sect dares to wantonly slaughter here. Moreover, they're all defenseless old, young, women, and children. You." The old man glanced coldly at Zhang Jiu and interrupted her. "They're just ants. Their deaths aren't worth pitying." Jiang Jiu's face turned ashen when she heard this. She was just about to speak when Yi Xian suddenly said, "Why are you wasting your breath on him?" As his voice rang out, the spirit grace sword in his right hand lightly slashed out fiercely. Hiss! The blood-red clothed man was directly sliced into two by Yi Xian's sword. The old man's face instantly turned savage when he saw this. "How dare you! You!" The old man's voice stopped abruptly because Yi Xian was charging towards him with a sword in hand. Yi Xian's speed was extremely swift, and the sword aura contained within the spirit grace sword was like a tsunami that pressed down on him to the point it was difficult for him to breathe. The old man's expression changed drastically when he sensed Yi Xian's sword aura. Is this the aura of a divine combination realm cultivator? The old man didn't have the time to think. He pulled with both hands, and the black cloth in his hands suddenly unfurled. Countless streams of black air shot towards Yi Xian like numerous venomous snakes. Yi Xian was just about to attack when the spirit grace sword in his hand shook violently. In an instant, the black air was actually completely absorbed by the spirit grace sword. No, to be more precise, it was absorbed by his evil sword intent. When the evil sword intent absorbed the black air, the aura contained within the spirit grace sword became even more terrifying. Yi Xian didn't think too much about it. He leaped up and slashed down with his sword. A sword of utmost evil. The old man's expression changed drastically. He hurriedly formed a hand seal with both hands, and in an instant, a gigantic black energy square shield appeared in front of him. However, the moment this black square shield appeared, it was instantly absorbed by the spirit grace sword in Yi Xian's hand. It's over. This was the last thought in the old man's mind. The sword fell. Boom! The old man was instantly sent flying hundreds of feet away. In the end, he crashed heavily into a house, and the entire house collapsed. In the ruins, the old man slowly climbed up. However, the moment he did, Yi Xian suddenly appeared in front of him. Fresh blood gushed out of the old man's mouth continuously. He stared at Yi Xian, and as though he wanted to say something, Yi Xian suddenly slashed down with his sword. Qi! The old man's entire body was instantly split into two. Blood spurted out like a fountain. And when this blood was enveloped by Yi Xian's sword intent, it actually turned dark black. At this moment, a group of cavalry suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian. They were the Grey Billow Dao soldiers. All the cavalry dismounted and knelt on one knee, and said in unison, "Greetings, Dean." Yi Xian turned to face the Grey Billow Dao soldiers. Immediately head to various parts of the city. Kill anyone you see from the blood sect on the spot. Yes. All the Grey Billow Dao soldiers bowed in unison, then flipped onto their horses, turned around, and sprinted towards various parts of the city. Blood sect. Yi Xian's left hand was still tightly clenched, and the spirit grace sword in his right hand was constantly trembling. Jiang Zhou suddenly walked to Yi Xian's side. She glanced at Yi Xian and said softly, "Are you all right?" Yi Xian shook his head slightly. He carried his sword and walked to a nearby noodle shop. He had a deep impression of this place. When he and his sister Yiling first came to Two Realms City, they had noodles here. And at this moment, there was a fat man lying on the floor of the noodle shop. It was the owner of the noodle shop. Dead. Although the population of Two Realms City wasn't high, there were still hundreds of thousands of people. And these hundreds of thousands of people? If this chapter isn't finished, please continue to the next page. At least 90% of them had been massacred. Ordinary people really didn't have any power to resist against those at the Divine Combination Realm and Myriad Dharma Realm. They could only be slaughtered. Yi Xian sat on the bench, and he gently placed the spirit grace sword on the table. He remained silent. Jiang Zhou quietly stood beside him, and she also didn't speak. After an unknown period of time, a middle-aged man suddenly appeared not far away from Yi Xian and Jiang Zhou. Behind the middle-aged man, there were over 30 people, and all of them were at the peak of the Divine Combination Realm. Apart from that, there was a small, shui character on the left side of their chests. Among this group of people, the middle-aged man leading them was the Ghost Sect's Grand Elder, Shui Li. Shui Li walked in front of Yi Xian and Jiang Zhou. He glanced at Yi Xian and said, "I've heard of you. I heard that you are the most monstrous genius among the younger generation of Green Prefecture besides Lanxiu." Yi Xian didn't say anything. Shui Li glanced at the nearby old man who had been dismembered by Yi Xian's sword. When he saw this corpse, his eyes slightly narrowed. After pondering for a moment, he looked at Yi Xian and said, my blood sect doesn't want to provoke you. However, this doesn't mean that we're afraid of you. As long as you turn a blind eye to what we've done, my blood sect will definitely not become enemies with you, Yi Xian. What do you think? Jiang Jiao sneered, turn a blind eye? Watch you continue to slaughter the people of my Jiang country? The middle-aged man said indifferently, they're all lowly people. Why should I care? Lowly? Jiang Jiao's expression was rather sinister. Could it be that you were born as a myriad Dharma realm expert? The middle-aged man was expressionless. It seems that you, Yi Xian, are determined to become enemies with my blood sect. Since that's the case. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly picked up the spirit grace sword on the table, turned around, and took a step forward before slashing down with his sword. When he saw Yi Xian suddenly attack, Shueli frowned, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. He didn't dodge, but instead blasted his fist forward. A bloody glow flickered on his fist. The sword and fist collided. Bang! An explosion suddenly resounded. Along with this explosion, Yi Xian and Shueli were pushed back by almost 30 meters. After Shueli stopped, he lowered his head and glanced at his fist. At this moment, his fist had already split open. Especially the back of his fist, there were quite a few cracks. Shueli was slightly shocked in his heart. After all, he was at the peak of the myriad Dharma realm. However, Yi Xian before him was only at the divine combination realm. Shueli raised his head and looked at Yi Xian, who was nearby, with a solemn expression in his eyes. Ha! Right at this moment, roaring laughter suddenly resounded from the horizon. A cloud ship slowly descended from the sky, and an old man flew out from it and arrived in the sky above Shueli and Yi Xian. Old Man Concord. Old Man Concord looked at Shueli and smiled. Grand Elder Shueli, you still haven't replied to the old man about joining forces with you. So, what's your decision? Shueli glanced at the nearby Yi Xian, and then he said, since you don't know how to appreciate kindness, then die. As he spoke, he looked at Old Man Concord and said, let's join forces and get rid of this person first. We'll discuss the rest later, all right? Old Man Concord roared with laughter, all right. As he spoke, over 20 people suddenly appeared behind him, and all of them were at the divine combination realm. Moreover, there were 3 at the divine combination realm. Coupled with the blood sect below, such a lineup was extremely terrifying. Meanwhile, Old Man Concord suddenly smiled and said, Yi Xian, aren't you a very monstrous genius? Let me tell you, the old man, there are many more monstrous geniuses than you in this world. Come and see who the old man has invited for you. As soon as Old Man Concord finished speaking, a young girl in an ice dress walked down slowly from the nearby cloud ship. End of this chapter. Chapter 219. As soon as the little girl left the boat, the temperature in the surroundings instantly plummeted, and every single time her feet touched the ground would instantly freeze. Every step she took was covered in ice. Not far away, Yi Xian was struck dumb as soon as the little girl got off the ship. On the other hand, the little girl's gaze descended onto Yi Xian at the first possible moment, and then 2 streams of icy tears slowly flowed down from her eyes when she saw Yi Xian. At this moment, Old Man Concord, who was originally smiling, was stunned. Something's off. Old Man Concord gazed at a beautiful woman behind the little girl, and the latter's beautiful brows were knit together slightly and slightly puzzled. The beautiful woman hesitated for a moment, and then she walked over to the little girl's side and spoke softly, Your Highness. The little girl did not reply. Instead, she walked towards the nearby Yi Xian. She walked a little too quickly. At this time, Old Man Concord suddenly walked in front of the little girl and said with a smile, Your Highness Saintess, the person my Concord sect wants to eliminate is Yi Xian. As he spoke, he pointed at Yi Xian who stood nearby. Eliminate Yi Xian? The little girl was stunned. In the next moment, her eyes suddenly froze while a strand of cold energy swept out from within her. Bang! Old Man Concord was instantly blasted 300 m away without the slightest sign. Old Man Concord had just stopped when his hands were directly frozen. Not only that, but the cold energy was also spreading along his palms towards his body. If this cold energy were to enter his body, he would immediately be frozen into an ice sculpture. Without the slightest hesitation, Old Man Concord's arms shook, and then his palms fell to the ground. There wasn't a single drop of blood because they'd been frozen. He decisively abandoned his palms. Old Man Concord instantly heaved a sigh of relief when he saw the cold energy vanish along with his palms, and then he seemed to have thought of something and suddenly raised his head to look at the little girl. Why? Why? At this moment, everyone here was looking at the little girl. Even the two Dharma realm experts behind the little girl were looking at her with bewilderment in their eyes. The little girl didn't answer Old Man Concord, and she just ran over to stand in front of Yi Xian. The expressions of the two Dharma realm experts behind the little girl changed drastically when they witnessed this scene, and they were just about to attack when the little girl suddenly threw herself into Yi Xian's arms. Big brother. Brother. Old Man Huan was petrified. The two 10,000 laws realm experts behind the little girl were also stunned. Brother. The little girl before him was naturally Yi Ling. As soon as Yi Xian was hugged by Yi Ling, a chill instantly swept through his body, causing him to shiver uncontrollably. So cold. A bone-piercing cold. This was Yi Xian's first impression. Sensing Yi Xian's condition, Yi Ling hurriedly let go of Yi Xian and took a few steps back. Seeing that frost had already appeared on Yi Xian's body, she immediately panicked. Brother, I didn't do it on purpose. Meanwhile, a strand of sword intent suddenly swept out from within Yi Xian. Kindness sword will. When the goodwill sword essence appeared, the cold air around him lessened a lot. Not far away, Old Man Huan suddenly looked at the two beautiful women behind Yi Ling, his expression extremely gloomy. You two, what is going on? The two beautiful women looked at each other, and finally, one of them walked to Yi Ling's side and said softly, Your Highness Saintess, this time we were entrusted by the Huan sect. Hearing the beautiful woman's words, Yi Ling suddenly looked at Old Man Huan not far away, her expression extremely cold. You want to kill my brother? Although her voice was calm, it was somewhat chilling. Old Man Huan said in a deep voice, Your Highness Saintess, the Saintess you came to the Northern Chill sect, how could you be Yi Xian's sister? Could it be that you? I am his sister. Yi Ling suddenly walked towards Old Man Huan. She stared coldly at him. If anyone dares to touch a hair on my brother's head, I will destroy his entire family. With that, she suddenly flew into the air, and in an instant, pure white snowflakes suddenly floated down from the sky. In the air, Yi Ling's hands came together, and the snowflakes suddenly stopped, but in the next moment, the snowflakes began to spin at high speed, and in an instant, the ground within a radius of 300 meters cracked, and at the same time, the snowflakes shot down from the sky. Their target was Old Man Huan. Heaven tier martial skill. Seeing this, Old Man Huan's expression changed greatly. At the moment, he did not even have the chance to escape, because the snowflakes had surrounded him from all directions. He could only fight to the death. Old Man Huan suddenly slammed his hands towards the ground. Boom! The place where he was instantly collapsed, and in the next instant, a pink blade suddenly shot up from the ground, slashing towards the sky. Wherever the pink blade passed, some of the snowflakes were directly shattered, and it directly slashed towards Yi Ling with irresistible force. Not far away, Yi Xian was about to act, but in the air, Yi Ling suddenly pointed at Old Man Huan. In the air, countless snowflakes suddenly gathered into a snow lotus, and this snow lotus directly smashed into the sharp blade. Boom! An explosion came from the sky, and under everyone's gazes, the pink blade instantly shattered, while the snow lotus remained intact. Moreover, it continued straight down and smashed into Old Man Huan's body. Bang! Old Man Huan explosively retreated 300 meters, and as soon as he stopped, a wave of cold air instantly enveloped his body, and then his entire body was directly frozen, and only his eyes could move. A complete defeat. Not far away, Shueli and the others were horrified. This old man Huan was a peak myriad Dharma realm expert. And he was defeated just like that? Moreover, this Frost North sect saintess was actually Yi Xian's younger sister? Something was not right. Shueli glanced at Yiling, and she already had the intention to retreat. As for the myriad Dharma realm experts of the Joyful Union sect behind old man Huan, they directly turned around and fled. Obviously, to them, if they did not flee now, they would not even have the chance to escape when Yi Xian and the Frost North sect saintess attacked together. In the air, Yiling suddenly pointed at the fleeing experts of the Joyful Union sect. Kill them. Kill them. Behind Yiling, the two myriad Dharma realm experts were somewhat hesitant. After all, the relationship between the Frost North sect and the Joyful Union sect was quite good. If they killed them again, then the two sects would really become mortal enemies. Their hesitation immediately caused the myriad Dharma realm experts of the Joyful Union sect to disappear into the sky. Seeing this, Yiling turned around and glanced at the two, her eyes cold. My brother is still right, everything depends on oneself. Hearing this, the two's expressions changed greatly, and they hurriedly knelt on one knee. Please calm down, Your Highness Saintess, we. The two were already anxious and sweating profusely. Although they were both in the myriad Dharma realm, in the sect, Yiling's current status was really above everything else. To put it bluntly, she was the hope for the complete rise of the Frost North sect. How terrifying was it to be able to kill a myriad Dharma realm expert at the age of 14? Yiling waved her hand. I don't need you two anymore. I will advance and retreat together with my brother. After saying this, she looked at Shueli below. The latter's expression changed greatly, and he hurriedly bowed deeply. Your Highness Saintess, this is a misunderstanding. The Blood sect has no intention of becoming enemies with the Frost North sect. Yiling said coldly, but you want to become enemies with my brother. If you become enemies with my brother, then you become enemies with me. As soon as she finished speaking, she suddenly took a step forward. With this step, a cold current suddenly poured down from the sky. At this moment, the temperature in the area plummeted again, and everyone felt as if they were in an ice house. At the same time, countless snowflakes suddenly appeared above Shueli and the others. Each snowflake was like a sharp blade, making people shudder. Seeing this scene, Shueli was horrified. Retreat, retreat immediately. This time, he had brought most of the elite disciples of the Blood sect. If they all died here, it would undoubtedly be a great blow to the Blood sect's vitality. At this moment, with Yi Xian and the others here, together with Yiling and the Frost North sect, it could be said that the Blood sect had no chance at all. We must flee. After receiving Shueli's order, the experts of the Blood sect behind him instantly retreated while Yiling's snowflakes had already shot down from the sky. Ah! In an instant, heart-wrenching screams instantly resounded in the area. The Blood sect's Divine Unity stage experts were actually unable to resist the snowflakes at all. Even Yi Xian was a little shocked at this moment. Because Yiling was so powerful that even he was a little unfamiliar with her. Shueli's expression instantly turned ferocious when he saw the miserable deaths of his own sect's disciples. He suddenly raised his head to look at Yiling in the sky. In the next moment, he transformed into a bloody shadow that shot explosively towards Yiling. Obviously, he couldn't care less at this moment. At the moment Shueli attacked, Yi Xian suddenly leaped up and slashed his sword down towards Shueli. At this moment, the spirit elegant sword in his hand was still dark black, and this slash directly caused space to tremble slightly. One sword to decide life and death. After adding the evil will sword intent, the power of his sword had exceeded any of his previous attacks. Shueli, who was originally charging towards Yiling, suddenly stopped. When he saw the power of Yi Xian's sword, his pupils instantly shrank to the size of a needle, and his eyes were filled with disbelief. A Divine Unity stage expert was actually able to display such a terrifying sword attack. Shueli didn't dare to think too much about it. The profound chi in his body surged, and he suddenly turned around and slapped out with his palm. In the center of his palm, a blood-red energy palm print vibrated out. At this moment, Yi Xian's sword arrived. Boom! The blood-red energy palm print instantly shattered, and Shueli was instantly blasted hundreds of meters away. As soon as he landed on the ground beneath his feet instantly cracked. At the same time, blood flowed continuously from the corner of his mouth, and his entire right arm had been chopped off by Yi Xian's sword. Although he didn't die, he was seriously injured and had completely lost the ability to fight. At this moment, a group of cavalry suddenly charged in from all directions. Blue Wave's Dao soldiers. After hundreds of cavalry joined the battlefield, the blood sect disciples immediately either fled or died. Yi Xian suddenly said, "Don't let a single one of them go." After killing all the blood sect disciples, hang their heads on the city gates of Two Realms City to console the souls of the hundreds of thousands of people in Two Realms City. Not far away, Shueli glared at Yi Xian with an incomparably ferocious expression. "My blood sect will not let." Before he finished speaking, Yi Xian suddenly rushed in front of him and slashed horizontally with his sword. Chi! Shueli's head directly flew off. Yi Xian sheathed the spirit elegant sword, turned around, and walked in front of Yi Ling. Then, he took her little hand and said, "Let's go. Brother will take you to eat noodles." Chapter 220. Eat noodles. Yi Xian pulled Yi Ling towards the noodle stall in the distance. Yi Ling's body was still cold, but it was blocked by Yi Xian's goodwill sword essence. Therefore, when Yi Xian held her hand, he was not too affected. At the noodle stall, Yi Xian placed a stool behind Yi Ling. Seeing that there was blood on the stool, he used his sleeve to wipe it 3 times before letting Yi Ling sit down. As for himself, he hurriedly ran to the stove and started a fire. Cook it himself. Fortunately, there were still various ingredients. Otherwise, they might not be able to eat the noodles. As for Yi Ling, she sat quietly on the stool that had already been frozen. She looked at Yi Xian, who was busy not far away, with a faint smile on her face. Her heart was incomparably satisfied and blissful. At this moment, she did not look like the Northern Chill Saintess at all. She was just an ordinary little girl. On the other side, Jiang Jiu glanced at Yi Xian and Yi Ling with a trace of envy in his eyes. Yi Xian's kindness towards Yi Ling was not the slightest bit fake, nor was there any benefit involved. It was pure kindness. This kind of kindness was the most genuine and purest. As someone who was born in the royal family, she had never received such kindness. In the royal family, there was only mutual deceit and mutual destruction. After a while, Yi Xian brought a bowl of noodles to Yi Ling. However, the bowl of noodles was instantly frozen. It was frozen solid, the expressions of the siblings froze. But soon, the siblings laughed again. Yi Ling got up and gently hugged Yi Xian. She said softly, "Brother, I missed you." Yi Xian's body stiffened. After a while, he gently hugged Yi Ling, "Brother too." The brother and sister hugged each other tightly. On the other side, the Grey Waves Dao soldiers had already killed all the disciples of the Blood Sect. All the heads of the disciples of the Blood Sect were hung on the city gates of Two Realms City. What happened in Two Worlds City was undoubtedly a great shock to the experts from the Divine Central Continent. 10,000 Dharma Realm cultivator and more than 30 Divine Combination Realm cultivators were all killed. At this moment, all the experts from the Central Divine Prefecture recognized a person, and it was Yi Xian. After what happened in Two Worlds City, some of the experts from the Divine Central Continent who had wanted to come to the Kingdom of Jiang had given up on the idea. In the city, an old woman in a hemp robe suddenly brought 3 heads to Yi Ling and Yi Xian. The siblings looked at the old woman, and the old woman threw the heads on the ground. These 3 heads belonged to the 3 Dharma realm experts who had escaped from the He Huan sect. The old woman walked in front of Yi Ling and said softly, "Xiao Linger, you said before that you must rely on yourself for everything. This point is not wrong. But I want to tell you that no matter what happens, the frigid North sect will always be your strongest shield." Yi Ling glanced at the three heads and didn't say anything. Yi Xian suddenly cupped his fists at the old woman. "Senior, my younger sister is still young. Please forgive her for her inappropriate words." As he spoke, he looked at Yi Ling with a stern expression. "Linger, Brother Xingjing once told you that we must never repay kindness with evil. The frigid North sect not only cured your typhoid, but also gave you the ability you have today. We siblings must remember this kindness for the rest of our lives." Yi Ling nodded slightly and said softly, "I understand, brother." As she spoke, she looked at the old woman in front of her. "Granny Lang, the frigid North sect has treated me extremely well. I won't throw a tantrum in the future." The old woman's expression softened. She smiled and said, "We're all family. There's no problem." As she spoke, she looked at Yi Xian, who was standing next to Yi Ling. After sizing up Yi Xian, she said, "You're Xiao Linger's brother, Yi Xian?" Yi Xian nodded. "Yes." The old woman nodded. "I've heard of you before, but I'm surprised to see you in person. Not only are you talented and powerful, but you're also a very good person. It's Xiao Linger's fortune to have you as her brother, and it's also the frigid North sect's fortune." Obviously, she approved of Yi Xian. The old man had seen Yi Xian fight with Xueli. He had become a sword master at such a young age. His talent was not much worse than Yi Ling's. Why would the frigid North sect deliberately target such a monstrous genius? Most importantly, he was Yi Ling's brother. It was not an exaggeration to say that he was half a member of the frigid North sect. For the frigid North sect, taking Yi Ling in was undoubtedly a very profitable deal. It was like buying one and getting one free. Hearing that the old woman approved of Yi Xian, Yi Ling was overjoyed. She actually had feelings for the frigid North sect. After she came to the frigid North sect, the people there treated her very well. At this moment, the old woman looked at Yi Ling. "Xiao Linger, it's over. We should go back." "Go back?" Yi Ling was stunned. She shook her head and held Yi Xian's arm tightly. "I'll go with you, brother." The old woman smiled bitterly. "You haven't completely subdued the relic in your body. To do so, you must return to the frigid North sect. We need to help you with the frigid North formation. Otherwise, if the relic backfires, you'll be in danger." "Relic?" Yi Xian looked at the old woman in confusion. The old woman nodded. "The number 1 relic in the frigid North sect hasn't been recognized by anyone for almost 100 years. And Xiao Linger has the highest chance. If she can get the relic's recognition, Xiao Linger's strength will go through a great transformation again. It'll be very beneficial for her. Besides." Speaking of this, her expression gradually became serious. "Her physique is a bit beyond our imagination. Anyway, we must let her return to the frigid North sect." But Yi Ling hugged Yi Xian tightly and would not let go. Seeing this, the old woman smiled bitterly. Although Yi Ling could easily kill a Dharma realm cultivator, she was still a child. Helpless, the old woman could only look at Yi Xian, hoping that Yi Xian could help persuade her. Yi Xian thought for a long time. In the end, she turned to Yi Ling and said with a smile, "Senior said that if you can subdue the relic in your body, your strength will become even stronger, right?" Yi Ling nodded. "Yes." Yi Xian gently rubbed Yi Ling's little head. "The stronger you are, the better you can help Big Brother." Yi Ling looked up at Yi Xian. "But I want to stay with you." Yi Xian smiled. "Once I'm done here, I'll immediately go to the Divine Central Continent to find you, okay?" Yi Ling lowered her head and did not speak. The old woman's smile became even more bitter. Yi Xian was about to speak when Yi Ling suddenly looked up at him. "One day. I'll stay with Big Brother for one day." I'll go back after one day. Her eyes were full of pleading and a little nervous, afraid that Yi Xian would not agree. How could Yi Xian not agree? He gently rubbed Yi Ling's little head and said with a smile, "Okay." One day. The old woman heaved a sigh of relief when she heard Yi Ling's words. Just like that, Yi Xian brought Yi Ling back to the imperial capital of the kingdom of Jiang. On that day, he did nothing but go shopping and play with Yi Ling. At night, Yi Xian and Yi Ling sat on the top of a mountain. A bright moon hung in the sky, and the sky was filled with stars. Yi Ling snuggled up to Yi Xian and held Yi Xian's arm tightly with her little hands. "Big brother, why are your eyes closed?" "I'm cultivating a peerless divine technique, so I can't open my eyes for now." "A peerless divine technique? Is it powerful? Is it as powerful as my wintry North Sect's 10,000-mile freeze?" "That's a heaven-grade martial technique. It might not be as powerful as yours, it's okay. I'll teach you the next time you come to the wintry North Sect." "Oh, right, the wintry North Sect has a lot of good stuff. I heard from the sect leader that I'll be the sect leader of the wintry North Sect in the future, which means that all those things are mine." "Well, you can take whatever you want. I'll give them all to you." Yi Xian, in the dark, Granny Leng's expression was a little ugly. "Big brother, I want to hear a story." Once upon a time, there was a mountain, and there was a temple on the mountain. In the temple, after daybreak, only Yi Xian was left on the mountain. Yi Xian sat on the mountain and looked into the distance in a daze. He only stood up when it was noon. There was a storage ring in his hand. In the storage ring, there were 3 low-grade swords, 2 middle-grade swords, and 1 superior-grade sword. There was also a heaven-grade sword. A heaven-grade sword. Yi Xian took out the heaven-grade sword. The sword was about 4 feet and 5 inches long. The blade was thin, and it was emitting a lightning glow. Force. This sword had its own lightning force. On the hilt of the sword, there were 2 small black words, Heavenly Thunder. Heavenly Thunder sword. Looking at the swords in front of him, Yi Xian had mixed feelings. These were left behind by Yi Ling. He did not know how Yi Ling had collected these swords. After a long time, Yi Xian put away the swords. The divine central continent. With that, he turned and left. Blue Waves Academy. Yi Xian returned to Blue Waves Academy. When Mo Yunqi and Bai Zhe saw Yi Xian in front of the Blue Waves Palace, Missouri Yunqi rushed up and gave Yi Xian a big hug. Bai Zhe pursed his lips. "How sentimental." Ji Anji glanced at Yi Xian and continued to nibble on the chicken drumstick in his hand. Feeling Mo Yunqi, Bai Zhe, and Ji Anji in front of him, Yi Xian grinned. "It's great that everyone is here. Family." In his heart, Mo Yunqi and the others were no longer just friends, but family. The path of the sword was lonely. If there were no friends or brothers along the way, what was the point of reaching the peak? If there were a few friends and brothers, even if the path of the sword couldn't reach the peak, so what? Yi Xian was about to speak, when Mo Yunqi suddenly smiled mysteriously. "Bandit Yi, don't speak for now. Come." With that, Mo Yunqi and the others led Yi Xian into the Blue Waves Palace. The inside of the palace was pitch black. Just as he was about to use his sword intent to sense the surroundings, the hall suddenly lit up and the entire palace was illuminated. In front of Yi Xian was a huge table. On the table were more than a dozen dishes. However, these dishes were extremely ugly, and some of them were so black that it was impossible to tell what they were. In the center of all the dishes was a large plate, and on the plate was a longevity peach the size of a watermelon. Longevity peach. Mo Yunqi walked in front of Yi Xian and grinned. "Bandit Yi, happy birthday." "Birthday?" Yi Xian was stunned on the spot. Because ever since he and his sister could remember, they had never celebrated their birthday. P.S. If I don't have your company, even if I have millions of years, what's the point? Although sometimes you scold me for being weak. Scold me for being thick-skinned, shameless, ugly. But, I still love you all. It's 3 p.m. today. It's really not easy to write 3 p.m. in the hospital. Everyone, praise me. I can't guarantee that I can write 3 p.m. every day, but I will try my best. I can only try my best. You're tuning into the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.